There we go. 2 week absence. Well, 1 week absence. We're back on the second week. Episode 16 of the Hooptalk podcast, reboot, revamp. For anyone who doesn't know, we are doing part 2 of our power rankings that we started a long time ago now. A lot has actually changed since we started the power rankings. So we might have to reevaluate where we left off, but we do have 15 teams left to go through today. Me and John went through the first 15 2 weeks ago. For anyone who doesn't know, I am able to show you guys what we went through. We started from the bottom. We had the Hornets, the Nets, the Bulls, and the Hawks as our lottery teams, the Pistons and the Warriors as fringe playoff teams, with the Rockets, Grizzlies, Clippers, Pacers, Lakers, Mavs, and Nuggets as our playoff level teams. And we had 2 championship level teams through the first 15 of the Cavs and the Celtics. Today we do have the last 15 teams. We probably will have to change some of those orders as well because I think a lot has changed since we last did this. But that's what we're here for. But anyway, John D, how have you been?
I've been great. I got a new desk, and a new monitor. So now content is even easier. Watching basketball, Luka just snapped back into reality the other night. So I'm on a high right now that a lot of people would love to have, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I've been great.
My team lost to the Jazz. So yeah. But so did you. So did you. So don't laugh. So did you. Yeah, so did you. But hey, man, we watched the game for the love of the game, not to be a fan of a team, man. Heartbroken by the Rockets now. But anyway, let's not waste too much time. We don't want to have everyone here for 3 hours. First team on the agenda is the Miami Heat. What are your thoughts on the Miami Heat? They did make it obviously a big deal at the trade deadline, so they are a different team. But where do you evaluate the Miami Heat right now?
Part of me thinks of this Miami Heat team as like a good team. You get Bam Adebayo, who's still one of the best defensive players in the NBA. Khalil Ware, who I think is one of the best rookies in this class, with his touch around the rim, with his shot blocking ability and his athleticism. The improvement that Tyler Hero has made as a kind of guy that puts pressure on the rim and plays around the 3-point line. The playmaking improvement that he has made this season. But then again, there's a few things that I don't necessarily love about this team. I loved Andrew Wiggins and thought, as a better point of attack defender and somebody that could play within this lineup. But once again, it feels like they're so far away, and it's not like we have like a future that we can really like look towards and be like, this is the direction they're going to take within the next 3 to 5 years to where they could be a championship team again. Another thing that I don't necessarily love is they don't have like a true number one playmaker. Like Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo are solid playmakers, but these are not guys that you would lean on to set the table for the offense play in and play out. I think that's something they should try and look for in the offseason, even if it's just somebody like Lonzo or anybody that can just pass at a higher level than Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo. But once again, this is still a really good team. I think Jaime Jaquez has struggled this season, but I still believe in him as a player. Nikola Jovic is still very solid. It's just going to be very interesting to see how they go into things over the next few years, because I don't know necessarily where they can get their star or if they're going to rebuild. So it's going to be interesting over the next couple of weeks to really see where they take that leap.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I agree. You're probably more optimistic on Jaime Jaquez than I am. But I think the revelation of the season for the Heat, I do think, has been the Bam at the 4, Khalil Ware at the 5.
Yeah.
Double big look, having Bam being able to still be that Swiss Army knife, switchable defender. But now you back that up with legitimate rim protection, which I think was the one thing Miami missed within their defense. Andrew Wiggins hasn't been the greatest since he's arrived in Miami, but he does provide that point of attack defender. So same thing with Davion Mitchell. I do think those are valuable additions, especially when you lose a guy like Jimmy Butler, who's playing like a fully engaged Jimmy Butler in Golden State. It looks quite interesting. But overall, I'm not high on this Miami Heat team in the short term. I do think they are a fringe playoff team. I think they could get in the play-in. I think they could be a 7-8 seed. Ultimately, they have no chance against a Boston or a Cleveland in the first round. They are going to lose in round 1. there's going to be no miracle run for them, I think. And I don't know what the future holds. I think Bam obviously started the season really poorly offensively. I do think he's looked better as of late, like maybe the last month or so. But you still have the concerns about Bam Adebayo as a offensive weapon because of where he takes his shots from. He's not the greatest rim finisher. He does rely a lot on mid-range jumpers and just a typically inefficient shot diet, and then he can't really shoot the three. And he's a solid passer and a high post hub, and like playing in 5 out and stuff. But I do think you miss a lot of offensive value from Bam in comparison to like the other top end bigs. And I do think he's been great defensively. And I don't think he's got enough credit for how good he's been defensively because his offense has regressed this year. So people aren't talking about Bam like one of the 5 best defenders in the league, which I think he has been again this year. But overall, I'm just not high on the Heat. So I would have them as a fringe playoff team. Do you have any contentions with that?
Nah, I would say fringe playoff team, especially in the East.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Miami fans, I don't think there's a finals run on the cards for you. So sorry to disappoint, I guess. Sorry to disappoint. The next team on the agenda. Oh, this is gonna be interesting. I actually want to hear your thoughts on this. The next team on the agenda is the Milwaukee Bucks. How do you evaluate the Milwaukee Bucks?
It's kind of crazy because Kyle Kuzma has looked a lot more engaged over the past couple of games with the Milwaukee Bucks. He's been trying a lot more on defense. I don't necessarily know what he's averaging, to be completely honest, but the effort is there, which is something I felt like was a very big question with Kyle Kuzma. I think Giannis and Dame have been really good this season, especially Damian Lillard, with all the concerns we had about him last season. But once again, I don't necessarily love their center rotation with Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis in a playoff scenario. I don't love how much they're going to probably lean on Kevin Porter Jr. and guys like Gary Trent in a playoff scenario. But there's a world where I see them get into the second round and they could put up a fight against Cleveland. I wouldn't pick them, but I think the Bucks are still like a playoff level team. And they're probably going to go to the second round, not make it much further than that.
Yeah, I don't like this Bucks team. Kyle Kuzma, to answer your question, is averaging 16, 8, and 2.5 inefficiently. But yeah, I don't like the Bucks. I think they do have one of the 5 best players on the planet, obviously, in Giannis, and I think Dame is having an amazing season. That's going under the radar. I do think he's one of the 15, 20 best players in the NBA. I don't have a list for you. I'm sorry. But an amazing point guard, still amazing offensively, tremendous gravity, can shoot the 3 from anywhere. Has looked really comfortable in the mid-range this year, which I think has been great. Still elite at getting to the line, excellent free throw shooter. But I just think in today's game, with how much everyone is asked to cover ground and be versatile and do a bunch of things, I don't think you can get away with as little athleticism as the Bucks have. Now you have Giannis, who is a tier 1 all-time athlete, which is fine.
Yeah.
But at every other position, you are athletically deficient. I actually think Kevin Porter Jr. and Jericho Sims were probably brought in for that reason, the athleticism. And I actually think KPJ has looked quite good in the 4 games he's played in Milwaukee. But I just think they're too athletically deficient. That's my biggest problem. Andre Jackson is a great athlete. My fault, forgot about him. Thank you. But just I look at Brook Lopez, he can't move anymore. He just can't move. That's a problem. Bobby Portis, who's now missing the rest of the season, the regular season, athletically deficient, and I have my other problems with Bobby Portis. Gary Trent, similar story. Chris Middleton before the trade, similar story. AJ Green. Like, you just have a lot of guys where you can't cover the ground needed to be good enough, in my opinion, in this modern NBA. Now, I think they are a playoff team. I think I'm very comfortable saying they are a playoff team. I think right now they're the 4 seed. I think they could win a playoff series, but I see no world in which they're able to get past the second round. So I think they're a playoff level team, but I just think they're too inferior to teams like the Celtics and the Cavs, who they would likely see in round 2, to where I can say I'm comfortable in believing that they're contenders for a championship or that they're in that upper group of teams. I think having a great player like Giannis is great, but I think in today's game, it goes so much further beyond just Do we have the best player in the series? I think in every Eastern Conference series, Giannis is the best player. He's going to be the best player. Now, does that mean he's going to play the best? I don't know. Anything can happen. But he's going to be the best player. But I don't think that's enough to win a series nowadays. I think you need a lot more than that. And I just don't think the Bucks have it, which is my biggest problem. In some series, they might even have the best two players. Like, Dame is still that level of player. Like, they might even have the best two players. And I still think they might not have enough to win the series. I just think 3 through 8, 9 is just not good enough, in my opinion. So that's my thoughts on the Bucks. But what do you think about Milwaukee?
I came into the season saying that we would see the Pacers versus Milwaukee again in the first round. And this was before I saw a game of either one of these teams. And I picked Indiana just because of how dangerous they are to find their way in the open floor and push the pace at any given moment, and the Bucks' deficiencies in that. Now, once again, they still do have Giannis, and I think Giannis could force the issue a lot more, especially against the Indiana Pacers defense. But as far as you said about just having the best player not being enough anymore, I said this just the other day. I would lean a lot more into roster construction if I'm rebuilding a team now. Like, I think a really well-ran roster or a really great built roster up top to bottom is much more important than having a guy and a lackluster roster around him. Because you look at teams like Cleveland, you wouldn't look at Donovan Mitchell to be a guy that can carry a team to an NBA Finals. You don't look at Darius Garland as one of those guys, but they have the roster from top to bottom. They have the versatility, and whatever lineup that they can see going against them, they can match. Okay, if they want to go smaller, we can move Evan Mobley at the 5 and have a more versatile look where Evan Mobley can guard on the perimeter and protect the rim. If they want to guard bigger teams, we have Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, and we have multiple ball handlers on the floor. If we want to run Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley on the same floor, we can do that. If we want to run Darius Garland and Jared Allen, we can do it the same way. So I think roster construction is a lot more important than just having the guy, which is something that we've seen a lot in NBA history, just having the guy, and sometimes it just ends up working out. But now in today's game, I think it's much more important to have the Derek Whites, the OGs, the Evan Mobleys, those type of guys on your team, instead of just like, okay, we're going to have Giannis, we're going to have Dame, and we're going to sign a bunch of $5 million level type of guys, and we're going to hopefully get Giannis to be the best player on the floor, and those guys can shoot a league average from 3, and we'll end up winning something.
Yeah, that's kind of been like my thought process on it for a while. I'm like, beyond just they're not athletic enough. Like, my other biggest issue with Milwaukee, and I think there's, at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, basketball it comes down to mathematics. You have to outscore the opposing team. You have a limited time frame to do so. Now, how you go about doing that can come in many different forms, and that's why I disagree with the idea that every team plays the same. But you have to do something that gives you the best chance to win, whether that's Boston getting up a bunch of threes with their driving kick offense, whether that's Cleveland using the pick and roll, whether that's OKC forcing a bunch of turnovers, whatever the case. Milwaukee, my biggest issue with Milwaukee is they don't force any turnovers and they don't get any offensive rebounds. You are losing the possession battle by such a significant margin that you put yourself at a disadvantage every single game. The Houston Rockets, for example, and we'll talk about the Houston Rockets later when we recalibrate the list. The Houston Rockets are not an efficient team when it comes to scoring, but they are so good as a transition defensive team and are so good at forcing turnovers and scoring of second chance opportunities that they can win games strictly off winning the possession battle. OKC are the kings of that. They turn the ball over barely ever, and they turn teams over a bunch. But even teams like Houston do the same thing. Milwaukee, I believe, are 30th in the league in offensive rebound rate and like 26th in the league in opponent turnovers. If you aren't doing anything to give yourself a chance in the possession battle, you have to be so perfect in your limited possessions that it gives you just a tougher chance to win. They force 13 turnovers a game. That's the only teams below them are the Jazz, the Bulls, the Suns, and the Wizards. That's not great. And their offensive rebound rate, I believe, is even worse. So it's just, that's my biggest criticism, I guess, with the Milwaukee Bucks, is they don't do anything to win the possession battle. And drink more water in the chat. It wasn't a super chat, but he is a Bucks fan, so I do think I want to bring it up. He said, I wonder how big of an issue that will be in the playoffs when the possessions are low anyways. My thing is, I think when there's less possessions, I think the possession battle becomes more important, not less. I think when in the regular season, when teams are playing 100 possessions a game, maybe you can afford to have less possessions. Sure, maybe. When there's only 80 possessions, if you're able to squeeze out 7 or 8 extra possessions, that's more valuable because possessions are more finite. The larger the sample of something is, 1 or 2 extra possessions are going to make a lesser difference. When the sample becomes smaller, 1 is a bigger deal. 1 out of 10 is bigger than 1 out of 100. So, like, I think this possession thing is going to be a bigger deal come postseason time, which is why I'm not very high on a team like the Milwaukee Bucks come postseason time, is because they don't do much in the possession battle. So I do have them as a playoff level team, but I can't get them any higher than that just because of the flaws, I believe, within the roster design. Do you agree, or would you?
I agree. And I took a quick peek at the chat and couldn't help but notice that it's your birthday. So once again, I just want to ask if is this true? Because the small amount of information that you put out to people, I didn't know. I truly didn't know. So can you confirm?
I mean, Hunter said happy birthday. I said thank you. That's
okay.
As far as mine.
Yeah,
he said happy birthday. I said thank you.
Okay. Well, everyone in the chat, you know what I'm saying, make sure you
I feel it's respectful.
You know
when someone say happy birthday, you gotta say thank you. So appreciate it, Hunter. Shout out to Hunter and everyone else who joined in. Hanzo, Des, all of you guys, MJ Green. I see you guys. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. But that's not important. That's not the matter at hand.
See, we gotta have those moments, man. Because in my head, we're gonna be doing this for the foreseeable future. I mean, I got no plans on leaving the Hoop Talk podcast, so we gotta build that common ground. The least I can do is say, you know what? Happy birthday to you, man. I have no clue how old you are. Not a single thought.
I've seen a few NBA finals in my day. I've seen a few. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Who knows? But the next team, the Minnesota Timberwolves. How do you feel about the Minnesota Timberwolves?
All right, so for everybody in the chat, an Anthony Edwards video will be dropping this week. I have a lot of thoughts about Anthony Edwards, where he's a great player, but I think that playmaking is not going to take them far. And especially since they've built this roster, or well, not built this roster, but the offense is such a concern with this roster that Ant's pull-up mid-range shooting and any other roster or offensive construction would have been such a big difference. But this offensive roster as an offensive unit is just not good enough to where the pull-up shooting is just enough. He has to be a higher level playmaker as well. Even if it comes to showing the opposing team that you're willing to make that pass to Rudy Gobert, even if you're just going to get the ball back, show them that you're going to make that pass, because it's when I'm watching these games, it looks like the defense knows Ant's not going to make the pass. I think he lost them that game against Houston the other night. I think he lost them that game, to be completely honest. And then you add in Julius Randle, who I don't think is a good fit anywhere offensively. And you add in Rudy Gobert, who's not an offensive positive at all. Jaden McDaniels, who is being used as a 3-and-D guy but can't shoot. There's just a lot of things with this Minnesota team that I'm still questionable about. But once again, as a defensive team, they're still very solid. I still do think they can make a first round very interesting, especially if they see a team like Memphis. I think that would be a really good series in the first round to where they can possibly sneak past there. But I think their offense is just so far back to where if they go against a team with a really solid and consistent offense in a play-in scenario, I think they lose to Golden State. A fully healthy Dallas Mavericks team, I would take Dallas just because of the sheer size that the Dallas Mavericks have. Against a Clippers team fully healthy, I would take the Clippers. I think their offense is so far back to where it can lose them a series. And as he has gotten better as a playmaker this season, I have seen some improvements, but he is still really far behind when it comes to that type of thing. And I think it's on the string as well, because he's not making the pass, but his teammates aren't cutting and they're not being active off the ball either. So I think either way, you kind of lose. So that's my strikes with Anthony Edwards. I still do think there is time for him to get better in that aspect. But once again, I think there just has to be some better offensive players. I think Naz Reid has been really good this season. Dante DiVincenzo in theory would have been really good for the Minnesota Timberwolves this season, but he just has not been shooting the ball as well this season. And then Rob Dillingham, I really like the idea of Rob Dillingham, but I just think he's really small to where he can be attacked consistently in a playoff scenario where you have guys like Jamal Murray or SGA or Steph Curry or Jimmy Butler just constantly attacking him. And it's still a lot of questions with this Minnesota team. And it's really hard for me to build that type of trust that I believe that they can really build the perfect team around it. Because you go to the Western Conference Finals and you trade Karl Anthony Towns. You know, based off of last season, if your favorite team goes to the Western Conference Finals, you need to sell your favorite player's jersey. If the Thunder go to the Western Conference Finals, sell SGA's jersey. But no, but I'm not the highest on the Timberwolves though. I'm not the highest on the Timberwolves.
Yeah, I've been quite vocal about my thoughts on the Timberwolves from the preseason to throughout the season. One thing that like is very weird with Anthony Edwards, he's in the 36th percentile in the league in rim efficiency this season. Mm-hmm. He's 60% at the rim. That's not great. He is in the 39th percentile on short mid-range shots. That's shots, I believe, within 4 to 14 feet at 40%. He's in the 36th percentile in long mid-range shots, which is shots from 14 feet and further. And he's in the 25th percentile on just all mid-range shots in general. So shots from 4 feet all the way to the three-point line. And this man is in the 88th percentile as a three-point shooter.
Out of nowhere.
Like the pull-up three-point shoot, the three-point shooting in general and the pull-up three-point shooting growth is something I don't think I can recall seeing in a very long time. I think it's real. Like, you can look at his playoff numbers. He's always been a better three-point shooter and pull-up shooter in the postseason. But this is now looking like a full season sample where he is a legitimate pull-up three-point shooter, which is great. Now, the issues are I still think he's an extremely limited and unwilling playmaker. I think the offense can get quite stagnant at times. I think since Julius Randle's been out, I do think Jaden McDaniels has been trusted to do a bit more offensively in terms of playing in the mid-range, one dribble pull-ups, attacking closeouts, which I do think has helped him be a little bit better and more effective. I think Naz Reid has been really valuable offensively. I think Rudy Gobert is still a liability. I think Nikhil is having a really good season. I think Mike Conley's career is probably coming to an end. But the biggest issue I have, not the issue, the biggest thing I find hard to evaluate is, do offenses stagnate because of poor coaching or because of the personnel? And what I mean by that is, for me, the Timberwolves offense can get really stagnant. And I noticed it a lot with the Philadelphia 76ers in the past with Joel Embiid. And at times I would look at the coaching and be like, they're not drawing anything up. They're not being creative. They're not doing anything on the backside. But then I watch guys like Joel Embiid and I watch guys like Anthony Edwards. And it's like, can you trust them to make consistent decisions and map the floor when players are in constant motion? Can you trust Anthony Edwards on a drive that if his player's on the wing and they drift to the corner, that he's going to be able to read that in real time and make that read? Can you trust if Joel Embiid gets the ball on the block and you run a split action on the opposite side, he's going to be able to read the cutter, the tag, and the corner skip pass? Or do you just want to have guys spot up around the court, not move so they can see where they are at all times and they don't have to keep looking and scanning the floor? For me, I'm of the belief that the reason the Timberwolves offense gets so stagnant is because Anthony Edwards doesn't map the floor well enough to be aware of where his teammates are at all times. So you kind of just have to keep them in the same spots. And I think that limits your postseason chances in the playoffs. Yeah. When teams can load up on you and you can't have help beaters, you can't have counters because your guy who creates the most advantage, who draws the most attention, can't map the floor well enough. That's a major concern for me. So that's my biggest concern with Anthony Edwards, beyond just the spacing. He sees doubles on drives. I think a lot of the reason why you're able to send so much help on Anthony Edwards is because the offense is so stagnant around him. and that's because of his limitations as a playmaker. Now, I'm not absolving Chris Finch. I do think there's some things that I haven't really appreciated from him, but I do think some of it is just Anthony Edwards has to be a better playmaker. Julius Randle has to not dominate the ball for 12 seconds on a possession. That just can't happen. So the Timberwolves, for me, they are a fringe playoff team. Like, I think they're a solid team. I don't think they're great. I think no matter who they play, they probably lose in the first round. Probably. I see no way in hell they get past the second round. And I think they are just too flawed on both sides of the ball, to be honest, but particularly on offense, to where I see them as a viable threat. So I'd have them as a fringe playoff team, but where would you have them?
Fringe playoff team. I definitely think there's an avenue they can lose in the play-in and not make the playoffs at all. But I do see a way they could be a 7th or 8th seed. I'm not gonna lie. If they find themselves in the 8th seed and they go up against the Thunder, it's not gonna look good. He's not gonna look good at all. He's not gonna look good at all, in my opinion. And they're gonna strip that Michael Jordan comp so fast, and it sucks because we see and there was a super chat earlier that kind of is similar, but we see young players who have a lot of success early in their career, and it's kind of like ahead of schedule. And once they start like going a few years where you can't get past the conference finals, you can't get past the second round, people just take all that hope away from them. When I didn't necessarily think I didn't think Anthony Edwards could be Michael Jordan at all. Like, let's just stop there.
Hot take.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think he'll be the greatest ever. Huh?
Yeah, but last year Anthony Edwards played really well in the playoffs, and the Minnesota Timberwolves got themselves to the conference finals. But I don't think outside of the pull-up shooting that there's necessarily a different player here. He was still really struggled. He really struggled as a playmaker, especially when they blitzed him as a ball handler, and we still see that today. So it's just now that he's losing, a lot of people are looking at him in that type of light when that was there in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a typical thing. Lift someone up to tear them down. It's a repeating cycle. They've done it with Devin Booker. They're going to do it with Anthony Edwards. If Shea doesn't go far this year, they'll do the same thing with Shea. It's a weird cycle. But someone did say it was drinking water. Can we get some positives? I agree. I do think it's not all doom and gloom in Minnesota. I do think the biggest deal is obviously Anthony Edwards' progression as a pull-up three-point shooter. That is a legitimate jump that should be commended. I think Naz Reid at the 4 is really good offensively for the Timberwolves. I think he's extremely valuable. His ability to self-create offense, shoot spot-up threes, make quick decisions, all extremely valuable. I think Rob Dillingham has a really bright future as an offensive initiator who can play in the backcourt next to Anthony Edwards. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a really, really good defensive player who can still make spot-up threes, who can just be impactful enough offensively to where you're not losing value having Nickeil out there. He can knock down the 3. He can get to a floater. He can do some 1-2 dribble things, which is valuable. I think Rudy Gobert is still one of the best rim protectors, drop bigs in the NBA. I think some of that value has been limited by the fact that because they don't have that secondary big like Cat, he is having to guard bigs more primarily, which is not getting the most value out of Rudy Gobert and his team defense. But Rudy Gobert is still one of the more impactful drop bigs in the NBA. So I do think the Timberwolves still have really good players and are a good team. I just think the conference has gotten stronger around them. They have regressed a bit, and there's still some limitations that I think teams can key in on because I think teams have just gone smarter as time has gone on. So there's the positives. I don't want to make it all doom and gloom about these teams. At the end of the day, they are NBA teams. There are good things about them. We might struggle to find some good things about the next team. They are the New Orleans Pelicans. But John D, I'm going to give you the floor to try. What's your thoughts on the New Orleans Pelicans?
Based on the record, I think it's very hard to not based on the record, but if you look at their record, you would automatically think, oh, there's nothing positive about this Pelicans.
13-43.
Yeah. It hasn't been a great season for Pelicans and Pelicans fans. But you go into next season, you got off of BI, which BI was a great player. Let's not get this confused at all. BI was a great player, but maybe the fit next to Zion was something that the Pelicans didn't necessarily love. Trey Murphy playing the way that he's played this season obviously hasn't made that better either. So there are a few things of why Brandon Ingram was going to be traded or eventually walk in free agency. The Pelicans did not want to pay him. And with the way Trey Murphy has been playing, Herb Jones coming into next season, I still think is going to be one of the better perimeter defenders in the league. I think DeJounte Murray should be traded this offseason. I think CJ McCollum should be traded this offseason. Yves Missi, if I'm saying his name correctly, as a rim protector and a lob threat, looks really good. And Zion Williamson has been really good this season. I think Zion, every time he's healthy, he shows why this Pelicans team is just not willing to move off of him. With the finishing, the crafty finishing, the playmaking, getting downhill. Like there are not a lot of NBA players that I would rather see, or that I would take over like being more scared to see than Zion. For example, if Zion Williamson is kind of coming downhill, he has a head full of steam. How many players would you really like, be more scared of other than like a Giannis or a LeBron? Zion Williamson, with that speed, that strength, that craftiness around the rim, being able to finish with any angle and add playmaking to this game, being a lob threat, being a player in transition, all that's really good. You're probably going to have a top 5 pick this offseason. You can go get a point guard. There's guys like VJ Edgecombe on the board. There's guys like Dylan Harper on the board if you guys get a top 2 pick. Kasparas Yakochonis is on the board. There are so many things you can do with this Pelicans team, and it has to do with you guys having a healthy Zion Williamson, because there are young pieces on this team that you can still be very positive about, whether it's Yves Missi, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones. These guys fit around Zion Williamson. Herb Jones has put the ball on the floor a lot more this season. He's been really efficient from 3. He's been finishing around the rim. Zion Williamson being the guy that creates rim pressure and now can pass out of those rim pressure looks once he gets them, whether it's off ball or on ball. Herb Jones, he can be a streaky shooter at times. There are times where he's knocking down the three. There's times where he's not. Yves Missi being the lob threat next to Zion Williamson, to where they can run inverted, or they can run pick and rolls between the two of them, and having the shooters around them in Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and let's just say for this instance, they draft Kasparas Yakochonis. Anybody. I still think there's an avenue where this Pelicans team can still be really good. And if Zion Williamson is healthy, I do believe you guys could be a very, very, very high-level playoff team.
Yeah, I think the bright spot, obviously, you got to begin with Trey Murphy. He's been amazing in the larger role that he's been given,
100%.
out of necessity, but he's taken the bull by the horns and really thrived in his opportunities. An elite 3-point shooter, really tremendous explosive athlete in space, very good off-ball mover. Offensively, he reminds me of like a better Mikal Bridges. That's what he reminds me of. He's a Mikal Bridges with a bit more self-creation in his game. I think the reason I guess I get that comparison is because I think their frames are similar in terms of the tall, wiry athlete. But I think Trey Murphy's like 6'9". Like he's huge. Like he might be 6'9", 6'10", which is really, really impressive. The next step for him will obviously just being able to get other guys involved, make those advanced reads. When teams start giving him that extra defensive attention, is he going to be able to get off the ball quicker and do things like that? That's the next step to stardom. But he has looked really good. Zion, since he's come back, looks in really, really good shape, which is, I know a lot of people aren't paying attention to the Pelicans, but he looks in really good shape. I think since he's been back, I want to get the numbers. He's averaging about 25.5 points a game, 61% from the field, 64% from the line is not ideal. About 5 assists a game, and he's still one of the most devastating downhill rim finishers in the NBA. For me, he's probably the second most dangerous player at the rim in the NBA. Like it's Giannis and then Zion to me. Just with that combination of strength, speed, athleticism, second jump, and then he's going to his left hand. Also his touch is ridiculous, but he's going to his left hand. Like he's not going to his right. He's not going to finish with his right. He's going to finish with his left. But he's so strong and so powerful, you can't cut him off. And if you do cut him off, he can just start throwing up floaters that just go straight through. Like his touch is crazy. Some of the best touch for a level of athlete like him I've ever seen. It's really impressive. So Zion looks great. Trey Murphy looks great. Yves Missi looks really promising. Now, offensively, you got some touch issues around the rim and some feel issues. But his explosiveness, his athleticism, his quick jump, really impressive. So I like what you've got there. Now, this draft pick, best case scenario, I think, is Cooper Flag. Best case scenario, you get Cooper Flag.
Yeah.
But there's options with this pick. I do think they need to hit on this pick. I think someone alluded to that in the chat earlier. CJ McCollum, I think, is probably there to stay. I don't know if you can trade him. DeJounte Murray was having a really bad season, but it's always unfortunate when someone goes down with a torn Achilles. Hopefully he can recover. But I just look at this. I look at this Pelicans team with a Herb Jones, with a Trey Murphy, with a Zion, with Yves Missi, with whoever they draft this year. I do think they have the makings of a competitive team. That, like, I don't think this season it's not all doom and gloom. Now, it's unfortunate that this season unfolded the way it did.
Yeah.
But looking forward, I still think the future is bright. Like, of any team situation that's a bad team, I do think the Pelicans probably have a more favorable one. Now, I will say, I think Jordan Hawkins is just not going to be that good. I think we're at the point where I watched him as a rookie and I was like, he's not strong enough. He's not physical enough to be able to get to where he wants on the floor, get his shot off at the NBA level, but he can shoot. Like, you can see he has shooting touch. And I'm watching him again this year. He's still not strong enough. He's still not quick enough. Most of his shots are coming off these dribble handoffs, pull-up jumpers at like the elbow. And like he's shooting the three at an okay clip, but it's nothing that you're really impressed by. He can't get to the rim, and when he does get to the rim, he doesn't finish well enough. Defensively, he's a mismatch every single time down the floor. I'm not a believer in Jordan Hawkins figuring out, which is unfortunate because I do think if he did figure out, he's exactly what you need around Zion, that elite sniper off movement, off curls. It was exactly what they need. I just don't think it's going to work out, which is unfortunate. But they've got another chance this year with a very high draft pick, where I do think the Pelicans are going to be in a pretty good situation. It all comes down to ultimately, can Zion stay healthy? And that's always going to be the question. He looks in good shape. He looks good when he's available, but can he stay healthy? That's the question. I think it's fair to say we have them as a lottery team. They're not going to go any further than that.
Yeah.
But yeah. Hopefully Zion stays healthy, because I think the league is better when Zion's available and playing on a competitive team, because he is really very entertaining to watch. Next team, this is going to be interesting because they just lost again tonight. A lot has been said about their inability to beat the top teams in the NBA. So I want to know your thoughts on the New York Knicks.
This is something that I saw on Twitter. I forgot who said it, but Karl Anthony Towns is at his best offensively at the 5. But
he doesn't know who said it. He's quoting my tweet, but okay.
I'm okay. But I truly forgot who said it. But he's at his best offensively at the 5 and at his best defensively at the 4, which I think is completely true. I think that's completely true. I think New York has some things that they can pinpoint that other teams can pinpoint offensively with those guys on the floor. I think Jalen Brunson is going to be attacked on mismatches a lot in the playoffs. I also think teams are going to fry Karl Anthony Towns' drop coverage. I do think Mikal Bridges is very inconsistent. I don't know if you trust Josh Hart as a shooter. Their depth really concerns me. Mitchell Robinson is going to be really relied on to bring a level of defensive intensity, and he hasn't played at all this season, or he hasn't played much this season at all. So it's just a lot of concerns with this New York Knicks team. And another thing that just bothers me in the back of my head is like Tibbs is not going to get these guys off the floor. Tibbs is going to run these guys a lot of minutes. So how durable are they going to be in the playoffs? Are they going to be are they going to be limping their way into the playoffs? And I'm not saying that as in the standings, but I'm saying that are they going to be fatigued? Are they going to be gassed by the time they get to the playoffs? That's what really concerns me, because Tibbs just has a real track record of doing that during the regular season, even in games where it's like we're up 15 in the 4th against the Pelicans. Pull your guys. Why is Jalen Brunson still in the game with 2 minutes left to play and we're up 17? So those things really concern me with the New York Knicks. I think they have the chance to be a really good offensive team, but I think their defense is what's really going to kill them, because you just have a lot of things that teams are going to attack, play in and play out.
Yeah, I don't think the Knicks are built to beat good teams. That's just my thought process. I think Karl Anthony Towns is having a really good season offensively, but I think he's always been a special offensive talent. I don't think he's particularly improved in the sense of improvement. I just think you've got Karl Anthony Towns at the 5, which is maximizing his offensive talents and gifts and his value because of that floor spacing that he does provide at the 5, allowing you to go 5 out. Then he's still able to pass. He's a really good driver. and he commands closeouts and all that attention, taking rim protectors away from the rim. All of that stuff is valuable. But he is a catastrophic defender as your anchor, as your rim protector. He's catastrophic. I can't think of other words. Yeah, I can't be like, well, he tries. Like, no, he is a catastrophic defender when he's at the 5. You need certain personnel, I think, to make him viable out there. Personnel that is not only very rare in the league right now, but it's very rare throughout NBA history. And the Knicks do not have that personnel. So defensively, I'm just not going to buy into it. I haven't liked Mikal Bridges' defense for 2/3 of the season. There was like a maybe 4 or 5 week stretch where I thought Mikal looked really good defensively. It might have been like December-ish, early January, where I was like, okay, Mikal looks better on defense. And then the time before that was terrible, and the time since that has not been great. Josh Hart, I think, is a good on-ball defender, but gets caught ball watching a bit too much for my liking away from the ball. OG Anunoby, I do think, is a really good defender, and I do think he does what he can in terms of trying to be that complementary wing rim protector to make up for Karl-Anthony Towns' deficiencies. But at the end of the day, there's only so much he could do. I actually think Jalen Brunson's improved a lot defensively. The issue is he is still just a size mismatch. I watched you talk about the game today against Boston. He's a mismatch on everyone. He's just too small. Drew Holiday's posting him up, hitting turnaround jumpers. They're getting cross-matched in transition. He's on Al Horford. He can't do anything. It's just you can't have a Jalen Brunson out there. No matter how much he competes, he's going to be a mismatch against the best teams in the NBA. And then you've got a Karl-Anthony Towns who his timing as a rim protector is terrible. His ability to defend the pick and roll is terrible, whether that's hedging, blitzing, drop, switching. In the third quarter, they went away from their drop because it was getting torched, evidently so. And he blew switches on back-to-back plays to start the third quarter. He blew both of them. Now, I don't think Boston scored in either one of those plays, but that's catastrophic defense. And then you talk about when teams flip the angle of the screen on Karl-Anthony Towns, he's caught on the wrong side way too often. His awareness there's too many issues, I think, with Karl-Anthony Towns defensively. And then you come off the bench with Cameron Payne and Miles McBride, who I think Miles McBride competes on defense, but these are just not major difference makers in a playoff setting. So they lack depth for me. Defensively, I can't see them holding up against any of the elite offenses in the NBA. So I don't think they are a contender. I do think they're very obviously a playoff team. And the positives are, offensively, they are very damn hard to stop. Whether that's Josh Hart being the most unique archetype in the NBA, being this guy who off rebounds is maybe like, of all non-superstars, is there anyone you'd rather have the ball in their hands in transition? Like Josh Hart, when he grabs a rebound, he's a one-man fast break. He's getting to the rim. He's going to finish routinely. Like the only player I can like even compare him to in that regard is like a Denny Avdia, who I really like in transition as well. But like Josh Hart to me is like even a level above that in terms of that one-man fast break for these like players who don't get that level of recognition. OG Anunoby, really good spot-up shooter, is doing a little bit more in terms of like straight line drives and stuff, which is cool. Mikal Bridges, really good in the mid-range, really good off-ball mover. I think he's one of the better off-ball movers in the NBA, which is extremely valuable. Karl-Anthony Towns, I alluded to his value offensively. I still think Jalen Brunson is one of the best offensive players in the NBA. I think this is actually the best season of Jalen Brunson's career. I think he's been amazing. So offensively, they're great. And Tibbs does a lot of cool things with getting Jalen Brunson off like these dribble handoffs or away from the ball, these flare screens and stuff to get him downhill. Like it's a lot of creative stuff. Tom Thibodeau, known as a defensive mind, but like the last few years, he's been really creative offensively, or whoever he has on his coaching staff. I don't know, but the Knicks offense has been really good. So that's the positives. I still do think they are just a tick below a contender because of the defensive issues I have. But I do have them as a very clear playoff level team. I'm going to assume you agree, but I want to ask, because I used to be of the belief, and I've done this a bit too much, where I will say a player is bad because I don't think what they do is valuable at the highest level in terms of can you win in the playoffs with this player. Like there's players who are really talented, but their skill sets just don't lend to high level playoff basketball. And I look at a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns, who is obviously supremely talented, having a tremendous offensive season. And then I just watch him, and I don't know how you win with Karl-Anthony Towns. But I'm not of the belief that I can say, because this is going to sound crazy, but hear me out. I'm not saying this guy is better than Karl Anthony Towns, but I think the Knicks would be a tougher matchup for teams like Cleveland or Boston if they still had Isaiah Hartenstein instead of Cat. And I don't think Isaiah Hartenstein is better than Cat. I don't think it's particularly close.
But that's what
But how do you win with a Karl Anthony Towns? And if you don't think you can win with a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, what makes him better than a guy like an Isaiah Hartenstein, who I think most people would agree you can win with? Like, what? Like, do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, but it's so I think it depends on how people look at it, because we have people would say that's crazy because people look at they don't look at the game as in depth. So like when they're like, oh, okay, you would much rather have Karl Anthony Towns because Karl Anthony Towns is putting up like what 24, 25 points per game, 13 rebounds. But when you look at how much Karl Anthony Towns gives up, which is a lot harder, well, not a lot harder to find, but you would have to really watch what he does give up. You could understand it's like, okay, Isaiah Hartenstein's going to give you some level of rim protection. He's going to give you a floater range. He's going to screen really well. He's going to make short roll decisions. He's going to be a passer for guys like OG Anunoby who can spot up and play off the ball. Mikal Bridges who can also cut to the basket. Josh Hart who can also be a rebounder and play in transition. Isaiah Hartenstein would be really good for this New York Knicks team. Now, especially with it being a matchup heavy type of playoff setting where you're going to have to deal with big men lineups with the Boston Celtics having the size that they have and the Cleveland Cavaliers that have the size that they have. But I also do think Karl Anthony Towns does provide a level of offense to where I would probably just really bank on my offense trying to knock these teams out. Because while I do think Isaiah Hartenstein does fix some of these problems with the New York Knicks defensively, I don't necessarily think that it's to the level where they would be favorited against a Boston or favorited against a Cleveland. So I would just love to have the duo of Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson at their offensive level, with the way Karl Anthony Towns is able to space the floor and put the ball on the floor in situations. And just really be able to provide a higher level of offense.
Yeah. Last year, the Knicks offense was still amazing, even in the postseason when Isaiah Hartenstein was on the floor. And he's obviously not as good as Karl Anthony Towns. It's very obvious he's not as good offensively as Karl Anthony Towns. But what he did provide offensively was still extremely valuable, with the offensive rebounding, with the screen setting, with that playing in the middle of the floor with the floater and stuff, the dribble handoff game. All of that stuff was extremely valuable. And defensively, I think we can all agree Isaiah Hartenstein is levels above in terms of his ability to play
100%.
drop. Now, he's not the mobile defender. He's not gone blitz and do all of those things. But as a drop defender, as a rim protector, he provides value that Karl Anthony Towns can't come close to. And obviously, I'm not saying they're going to be favored against the Cavs or the Celtics. I don't think anything they really could do is going to get them favored against the Celtics and what the Cavs have become. But I do think their chance of winning increases, because right now, as presently constructed, to me, this defense is untenable. Like, there's just no way they can win playing defense like this against the best teams. Whereas I think with Isaiah Hartenstein, even if I don't think they would win, I don't think they would beat Boston, I don't think they would beat Cleveland, I think they have a better chance because of that rim protection they would have with Hartenstein. Now, maybe they might not have a better chance. I'm not like, this is just me, like, this is me spitballing like a take that I haven't really thought through all the way. I probably have to think about this a lot more than I have. Like, I just started thinking about it like 4 minutes ago. But it comes down to, I think the way I evaluate players in general, I only evaluate them based on, well, not only, but I mainly evaluate them based on how good do I think you are at the highest levels. I don't value floor raising that much. I don't value, like, if you're able to make a bad team solid. I value how your game translates at the highest level, whether that's playing next to better teammates, whether that's playing against certain matchups or schemes in the postseason. How scheme proof are you? How matchup proof are you? All of those things I value more than just, if a team's bad, how good can you make them? But by all of those measures, I look at Karl Anthony Towns and I'm like, at the higher levels, I start viewing you as not the overwhelmingly great player that you very clearly are because of all the limitations defensively. And I feel like that's leading me down the wrong conclusion, which is, I guess I'm saying, I think I might have to change the way I view the game in that regard, which maybe I will. I don't know, but I have to think about it. Long story short, I have concerns about Karl Anthony Towns in the playoffs defensively. I think that's something a lot of people could agree with. So we'll leave it at that. Everything else I said about Isaiah Hartenstein and all of that stuff was nonsense. I wasted everyone's time. I apologize. But that's my take. I have concerns about Karl Anthony Towns defensively come playoff time. Anyway, the next team, I think this is going to be very quick. Very quick in terms of where they place, but we can talk about them, of course. The next team is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Talk to me about the Oklahoma City Thunder.
The Oklahoma City Thunder, obviously, are a championship level. I think this Oklahoma City Thunder, by the way, they're one of the greatest defenses I've ever seen. But once again, I haven't seen a lot of basketball. I haven't seen the full season of the Detroit Pistons when they beat the Los Angeles Lakers. But when they compare to some of the better defenses I have seen, this is one of the greatest defenses I've seen. I've seen them truly shut out offenses, some of the best offenses in the league. They've done it to Boston for a second half. That second matchup against Cleveland where they held them to 14 points in the first quarter. They shut down the Knicks offense. And I think back-to-back games that they played them. The way that they're able to wreak havoc on the perimeter with the turnovers that they force and getting out in transition, having one of the best rim protectors in the league, and having Isaiah Hartenstein as well, who plays great drop defense and protects the rim at a high level as well. Their defense is going to be very, very, very hard to overcome, to the point where guys that can't shoot and aren't the best ball handlers may not be able to play in that series. I saw the Cleveland Cavaliers when they played against the Thunder. One of the biggest things the Cavs were doing this season is we're going to have Evan Mobley be more of a ball handler this season. The second Evan Mobley put the ball on the floor, it was going the other way. It's insane. They've been able to really shut down some of the best offenses in the league. For example, against Boston, Jaylen Brown was completely out of that game in the second half. They scored 27 points in the second half in total. And the defense is really impressive. It's really impressive. And when you look at the personnel with Jalen Williams, Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, SGA is a really good defender. You have Isaiah Hartenstein. You have Chet Holmgren. There's a lot of high-level defenders that fly around the floor. They fly around the floor. If you look at the play-in, not the play-in game, the in-season tournament game against the Dallas Mavericks back when Luka was on the team, the way they were able to trap Luka and get the ball out of his hand, it's insane. And the way they're able to recover after trapping, all that stuff is great. And then you look at the offensive side and you have guys like SGA, who's one of the better floor raisers in the NBA and who has such an efficient offense that he can go to play after play and is having one of the best guard seasons of the past 25 years. SGA has been phenomenal. Now, there are some concerns I have with this Oklahoma City Thunder team, to where if they were to lose in a Western Conference Finals or in a Western Conference Finals or in the NBA Finals, I would think it would be to their lack of perimeter shooting. And I said this in my my trade deadline winners and losers video. I think Cam Johnson was right there, and you just didn't get him. Especially for the Oklahoma City Thunder, like some teams with limited draft capital, I can understand why you didn't go get Cam Johnson, but for the Oklahoma City Thunder not going to get him and how easy it could have been for them, like they could have made this a lot easier for them. But once again, sometimes with Jalen Williams, I struggle to see like the athleticism, the first step. It's really hard for him to get to his spot somehow. And it's really it really leads to a lot of contested shots, a lot of bad shots. And I would say if the Thunder do lose in a conference finals or a finals, it would be because of the outside shooting and just that really just hitting a hard flat.
I think statistically, I just looked up. I think they're the third best defense by relative defensive rating of the 3-point era, only behind the 04 Spurs and the 08 Celtics. The 04 Spurs went on to lose to the Lakers in round 2. Derek Fisher. And the 08 Celtics obviously went on to go win a championship. I know the 08 Celtics defense was not as great in the postseason for myriad of different reasons. They also couldn't win a game on the road in that postseason, but
yeah,
getting away from the point. OKC's defense is amazing. I do think it's one of the better defenses I've seen in a long time. Although I do remember after 2 games of the Minnesota-Denver series, people were saying the same thing about the Timberwolves, that they were one of the best defenses we've ever seen. And then people watched Luka tear that defense apart, and we never heard those talks ever again. So I think sometimes people can be a bit reactionary about certain defenses. I do think it's possible that teams can maybe not exploit this defense, but have some fortune because of the way they are so aggressive in their traps and their blitzes and rotating and flying around behind the play, that when you do have high-level decision makers, I'm looking at a team like the Lakers, maybe you keep that ball moving, you keep that ball swinging against their hard traps and rotations and guys who can handle that and play out of that and play with those numbers advantages. Maybe you might have some fortune against them. I don't know. Offensively, I think that's where the concern comes. Obviously, championship level team, putting out there. They're in that group with Boston and Cleveland so far. Championship level team, no doubt. The concern is offensively, the offense is practically Shea save us. Like we can call it what we want. We can talk about the ball movement and the personnel. These guys knock down threes. The offense is quite literally Shea either scores or creates an advantage, and we play out of that. That's pretty much it. When you look at Shea Gilgeous-Alexander on the floor without what I would deem his next 3 best players, Isaiah Hartenstein, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen Williams, the Thunder have an 132 offensive rating. In a nearly 500-minute sample, this is not a small sample size of minutes. With all 3 of them off the floor with just Shea, they have an 132 offensive rating. That is ridiculous. What Shea is doing offensively this season is nothing short of carry job. He is carrying this offense to heights that we haven't seen in a while. He's been amazing. He's one of the best mid-range scorers in the league, if not the best. He's the best driver in the league, in my opinion. He has one of the best handles in the league. His ability to get off the ball quick when traps and doubles come is amazing, but also being able to use his handle to get through traps and doubles. So, like, the game last night, Denver versus LA, my issue with Jokic is that you can send doubles and traps or even fake doubles and traps, and Jokic will get off the ball so quick that you're able to rotate and scramble out of it, especially when the Nuggets don't have the elite shooters that maybe they once had. Shea, his handle is so secure that he's able to play in a crowd to where you have to send the double. You have to commit to the double. You can't stunt, you can't shade over, because Shea can get through those traps. He can get through you digging at the nail. He can get through all of those things with his array of pickups and his ability to draw contact. That you have to put your defense in rotation. You have to do that. So that's what makes him, I think, so hard and a matchup problem. And then you got guys like J-Dub who are so good playing off the second side, playing off Shea's gravity, driving closeouts, continuing the advantage. And then J-Dub really good in the mid-range, can make spot-up threes, can get to the rim. He's not functionally as good as Shea in any sort of regard offensively, but he can do similar things when given that leeway and that single coverage that he gets quite often. Chet Holmgren is now a Swiss Army knife offensively, where he's playing in the short roll. He's driving off Shea, drawing doubles in pick and roll. He can make threes. He's really comfortable with the ball in his hands now. Isaiah Hartenstein has maybe the 2nd or 3rd best big man floater in the NBA, which is an extremely dangerous weapon playing in that short roll in that pocket. So offensively, I think they have pieces, but the concern is, do we let Lou Dort shoot in the postseason? Is Lou Dort a legitimate 40% three-point shooter? What does Isaiah Joe do when you make him break the three-point line, when you run him off the line? Similar to a Buddy Hield, Isaiah Joe kind of reminds me of him in that way. What do we do when we start sending a bit more aggressive coverages towards Jalen Williams? Can he create for himself? Is the other Jalen Williams going to be in the rotation in the postseason? Because
I hope not.
That can get scary. So that's how I see OKC possibly losing. Is their offense lets them down outside of Shea. I think Shea will be Shea. even if he's not having a tremendously great scoring series because of the attention he draws, he's going to create for his teammates. He's going to get guys the shots they need. Is can they knock them down with consistency? I don't know. I think that's how they could lose. I still think defensively they have enough in terms of winning that possession battle to where I think they're going to win against most teams in the Western Conference, but that's the only way I can see them losing. But I obviously do have them as a championship level team.
Yeah.
Now, the next team is a team that a lot of people got very excited about early on in the season, and it has kind of derailed a little bit. The Orlando Magic. Talk to me about the Orlando Magic.
Paolo Banchero has been a really big talking point over the past couple of weeks, just because, especially me being a Paolo guy, it hurts to say that he has been struggling, just as somebody who is playing heavy isolation. I saw something saying that a lot of Paolo Banchero's looks is through isolation. He doesn't have a lot of actions ran for him. It's so weird because Paolo Banchero is not a great ball handler, but the Magic is consistently asking him, hey, Paolo, go create on the perimeter. He doesn't have to do that. He's not good at it. What I would, and I've said this multiple times, I would have Paolo. If Paolo's going to create for me, it's going to be, first off, he's going to be inside the arc. It's going to be inside the arc around the elbow. So where it could be a 1 or 2 dribble move so he can get to the rim and he can pass out of it, because Paolo is a great passer. He's a great finisher around the rim. I just don't see a world where Paolo needs to be creating on the perimeter, at least not right now, because his handle just doesn't allow him to, and he is a tough shot maker. He's the tough shot taker, but it's just like, the reason he's taking those tough shots is because he can't get to the rim. The reason he's taking these tough shots is because sometimes he loses the ball and it's like, you know what? It's 2.5 seconds left on the shot clock. Let me just go with this mid-range fadeaway, and maybe last year it was bias, coming into the season, it was still bias. Franz is the better player. He's the better player right now. And it's hard to really accept. It's hard to really accept because I'm really high on Paolo and what Paolo can be. But on top of that, this Magic offense is not good at all. There's not, the KCP has been a huge disappointment this season. Wendell Carter Jr. has been a huge disappointment this season, in my opinion. I think Tristan Da Silva has had some moments where he could be a spot-up shooter, somebody that can run the lane in transition and be a solid team defender. But I need to see more consistency from that. Same can be said with Anthony Black. The loss of Jalen Suggs has been really, really tough on the Orlando Magic as well. And I don't think there's a world where they can miss the playoffs because the Eastern Conference is the Eastern Conference, but it's ugly, man, because I truly thought this Magic team was going to be like dangerous, like really dangerous against any team in the East. So it is what it is. I would say, like, what do we have? Fringe playoff team as a tier?
Yes.
Fringe playoff would be my tier for the Orlando Magic. Sorry, I forgot.
No, you good. They started off good. I mean, if you remember correctly, I think Paolo had the first 5 games. I think they were 3-2. Then he goes down. I think they went like 1-4 in the games right after Paolo went down, and then they went 11-1.
Yeah,
and everyone was like, "Oh my god." I've been quite vocal about Paolo. I will say he's at 64% of the rim. He's 6'10". He is at 38% from mid-range, in which he takes 45% of his shots, which is crazy. And he is a 31% three-point shooter. He's always been and is still just an inefficient scorer. That's just what he is. That's the reality of the situation. That's not me hating. That's just me acknowledging the fact of the situation is he's an inefficient scorer. His effective field goal percentage is at 47%. That's terrible. The Orlando Magic also, I believe, have the 3rd best defense in the NBA, but they also have the 3rd worst offense in the NBA, or the 4th worst offense, and the 2nd worst half-court offense. They're just terrible offensively. And that's why I don't think they're going to beat anyone in the playoff series. They just can't score. Similar problem they had last year against the Cavs. They were really good defensively against the Cavs, but they couldn't score the ball consistently. And yes, I think Franz is the best player on the team. I've always thought Franz was the best player on the team. Hasn't really changed for me. But Franz is not innocent in all of this either. Franz needs to become a better outside shooter himself. He has a weird hitch in his release, especially from three, which is very weird, which I think is kind of problematic. But defensively, he's really good. As a driver, he's really good. Getting to the rim and finishing, really, really good. And I think he just plays better and more efficient basketball than Paolo does. But I think the issues with Orlando go far beyond Paolo. It comes down to spacing. It comes down to personnel. It comes down to what you have Paolo doing, which you alluded to in terms of the play types and the pick and rolls and the isolations. And his handle's just not functional enough to do the things that they're asking him to do. And I think it ultimately is hurting him. Now, 66% free throw shooting, that's on him. Like, I keep trying to widen your base, please. Like, I think that's the problem. Like, his base is too narrow. I think it messes up his balance and his coordination. I think that's what I think is the case. But he's taking so many mid-range jumpers because I think the spots that they're putting him in. Now, I will argue that when they put Franz in those spots, I do think he's just better at being able to get to the basket, get to a floater, and his touch is better, so he's able to just be more viable in those areas. But I think the biggest issue is that Wendell Carter Jr. is a theoretical floor spacer. He's a big who's willing to shoot, but no one's guarding him.
Nobody's guarding him. Nobody.
No one is guarding him, and he's not making him. He's shooting 19% from three. That's egregious. KCP is shooting 31% from three. That's egregious. Jalen Suggs, they were trying to give him on-ball reps as a pick-and-roll ball handler. Teams are going under, as they should, and he's shooting 31% from three. Anthony Black is shooting 28% from three. Tristan Da Silva is shooting 33% from three. Jonathan Isaac is having the worst offensive year of his career, and he was never a good offensive player to begin with. He's been unplayable offensively. He's shooting, what is he shooting from three? 26% from three. No one on the team can shoot. They drafted Jet Howard. He's shooting 32% from three, and he was drafted to shoot.
I thought Jet Howard was going to be the guy. I'm like, yo, Jet Howard going to make some shots. He's going to find his way in the rotation.
No one on the team can shoot. Like, no one can shoot. And teams know it. I think Orlando knows it. And Paolo is a really good passer, really gifted passer. I think for a guy his size, 6'10", he's one of the better passers in the NBA. But you don't maximize that when you have him creating from the outside. Like you said, put him in the mid post, put him at the elbow, put him on the block, do those type of things. Make a double come. He's going to make the right read. Now, are you going to make the shot? Probably not. But, like, it comes down to the process. And the process right now with Paolo Banchero and the Orlando Magic is terrible offensively. And it's not sustainable. They aren't going to beat anyone in the playoffs with this level of bad offense unless they get another ridiculous postseason of Paolo Banchero shooting untenable numbers. I remember last year in the postseason, for anyone wondering, Paolo Banchero shot 45% from mid-range, 56% on long mid-range, shot 40% from three. These are not numbers that he has shown to be able to sustain at any point of his career. When he shot 44% of his shots from mid-range, I can assure you, every single time he did that, the Cavs said, we'll live with that. Every single time. He shot 45% from mid-range, but when he's not getting to the rim, when he's not putting pressure on the basket, the Cavs live with that. I know people seen that clip on Twitter going viral of George Niang saying, keep shooting them mid-ranges. We'll see how far that gets you. We can laugh at that all we want. That's a fact. Teams are happy with Paolo Banchero shooting the ball. He's not punishing defenses with these tough shots he's taking. He's letting them off the hook. And teams are happy to live with that. Now, I will say his touch around the rim, I'm not as high on his rim finishing as you are. You think he's a good finisher. I think his touch is quite bad. I just think he's so good and can get there whenever he really wants if you put him in the right spot so that he'll get to the line and he'll score enough. Where at the end of the day, 64% rim finishing is not good for the rim. But if you get to the rim as much as you want, at the end of the day, that's 64% on 2-pointers. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. Like, that's an efficient form of offense. So the Magic have to do a better job of getting Paolo in the spots that he's better at. They have to get spacing around him and Franz. They have to. But also, Paolo and Franz have to improve. Franz is an outside shooter. Paolo is a decision maker and a ball handler. But yeah, I have them as a fringe playoff team because they can't score. Like, they're one of the worst offenses in the NBA. I think I just looked at it. The only half-court offense worse than them, I believe, is the Charlotte Hornets. They are worse than the Wizards in the half-court. Like, they are terrible in the half-court. That's my biggest concern. I think that's everyone's biggest concern. That's why they're not going to win a playoff series. Right now, they are a play-in team. They are just slightly below 500. They are the 7th seed, which is crazy. 28 and 13, you get to be the 7th seed. Must be nice. But yeah, fringe playoff team. That's my thoughts on the Orlando Magic. The next team, oh my God, this is going to be bad. The Philadelphia 76ers. Talk to me.
Philly, man. Philly. This was kind of a doom season to start, and the fact that they have not shut down Joel Embiid yet is really, really concerning. And it's like, you guys are 4 games out, or I would say 2 to 4 games out of the play-in at this moment.
They're now the 12th seed. They're now below the Nets after that Nick Claxton game winner. Yeah, they're 20 and 36. They are about 2 games behind the Bulls for the 10 seed, which is.
And it's like, why even compete for the 10 seed? Because one, you have to win 2 games.
They're competing to lose to Cleveland. That's what they're doing.
Exactly. That's exactly what they're doing. So it's a lot with injuries. Paul George has been extremely, extremely disappointing this season. Joel Embiid I don't think he's played more than 25 games this year. Jared McCain, which is probably their brightest spot of the season, in my opinion, just because I was a Jared McCain guy coming into the draft. Him playing the way that he did, it was really exciting to see. And now, like, you have a lot of injuries. Paul George is playing bad. Joel Embiid hasn't looked good when he was on the floor. I mean, he just has not looked like the same Joel Embiid we know. He's been sluggish. He's been not really into it. And part of me is like, you should have shut him down. Gave him the surgery. It's like, look, you're going to rest this entire season. We're going to get this top 6 protected pick. We're going to go into next year, either trading the 6th pick or going to get somebody who can make a difference on this team. Either way, just having it is better than not having it. So now there's a world where OKC probably gets like the 11th pick in the draft. And, that's what happens. But it's really disappointing for Philly, man. It feels like they can't catch a break because in the end of the day, I think Philly has done their job when it comes to giving Joel Embiid a supporting cast, whether it's James Harden, whether it's drafting Tyrese Maxey, whether it's going out and going to get Jimmy Butler or getting Paul George. They have done their job as in putting a situation around Joel Embiid where he can win. And it's like, you can't get lucky. You just can't get lucky. Daryl Morey and James Harden get into a feud. They pick Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler. Ben Simmons decides he doesn't want to shoot anymore. It's just a lot of things that didn't go Philly's way. And it hurts, man. Like, I'm telling you, if they didn't have the Eagles, you would have to check on Philly fans. But yeah, man. I mean, it's an extremely disappointing season. It makes it worse that they can. I can see like they can still get their pick, but it's just like you're gonna have to beat out the Pelicans, Utah. You're gonna have to beat out Washington. You're gonna have to beat out Charlotte, and then there's a 5th team that I'm forgetting. But if
that pick falls out the top 6, it goes to OKC.
Exactly. So it's like you could get the OKC could have the 7th pick in the draft and go get somebody where it's like, you know what? He would probably do really well with a team that needs him. But you know what? He's going to sit at the end of our bench for 2 years. Then we're going to forget about him. Then he's going to come in. He's going to be a really good player. So, yeah.
Before I get negative, because there's not a lot of positives, Tyrese Maxey is a hell of a player.
Yeah.
He started the season slow, dealing with some of the more aggressive coverages he's had to see because Joel Embiid wasn't out there and he didn't look great. And I was very vocal about that. But the last 2 months, maybe, I don't know how long it's been, Tyrese Maxey has been really good. He's adjusting to the coverages he's seeing. His speed, his quickness, his ability to get downhill, his ability to break traps, his ability to shoot threes out of pick and roll, shoot threes off the bounce, really commendable. Since December 8th, he's averaging 29 points per game, shooting 47% from the field and 37% from 3 on 10 attempts a game, with 7 assists a game. Now the Sixers still suck, but that's not because of Tyrese Maxey. I think he's been one of the very few bright spots in Philly. Jared McCain was another one. Looked really, really good offensively. Now defensively, yeah, whatever, but really good offensively. Really good offensively when he was available, and he tore his meniscus, and they gave him the surgery that they should have gave someone else. We'll get to that. Quentin Grimes, since he's been there, I've liked what I've seen. His quickness, his ability to be decisive, not hold the ball, make quick decisions. You'll hear me say a lot about role players making quick decisions. That's something I value a lot. Quick decisions. Quentin Grimes is really good at that. Yabusele, I think, was getting probably a bit overrated by people just because of like it's nice to see Yabusele in the league after what he did in the Olympics and seeing him back and making
what did he do?
Just dunked on a fraud and stuff and looks really good. But yeah, like I think defensively, I still think he's not viable defensively, in my opinion. But I do think offensively there is a value to what he can do now. His release is a bit too slow, so you close out all of a sudden he's not exactly a viable shooter, but he's still valuable. I think he's been a valuable piece for the Sixers this year, and I think he's got a long-term job in the NBA. I think Justin Edwards has been really good for the Sixers, especially as an undrafted player coming out as the number one recruit in high school. Obviously, he didn't have a great year in college, but still he's in the league making an impact, being valuable. I've now run out of positives. So, Nick Nurse, I got to apologize to Penn and Ox. He is doing some of the most egregious coaching I've ever seen in terms of rotations, in terms of schematics, in terms of philosophy. I can't blame him for Embiid still playing because I don't know who that's on. I don't know if that's the front office or him. I don't know. But I'm getting tired of Embiid saying after every game, I'm not right. Nick Nurse saying after every game, Joel's very clearly not right, but he's giving us what he can. Maxey saying Embiid's not right. If everyone can see and everyone is in agreement that he's not right and you're playing for nothing, why are we playing? What are we aiming to achieve out of this season? He's not going to play his way into shape. Like, it's not that he's out of shape. He is hurt. He is compromised. There's no reason for him to be on the floor. You're not playing for anything. You're not competing for anything. It looks like malpractice from the organization, if I'm being honest. I don't know why he's playing. Let him get the surgery. Let him recover. Bring him back next season. We'll see what we have. This is the worst Joel Embiid has looked in his career. This includes rookie Joel Embiid. He has looked terrible. He doesn't look like an all-star. He doesn't look like an all-NBA player. He doesn't look like an MVP candidate. He looks like a sub-all-star player. He can't impose himself physically. Defensively, he's been horrible. He can't move around the floor. He looks bad. Joel Embiid looks bad. Don't play him. We don't need to play him. I can assure you, Philadelphia 76ers fans do not want you to be playing Joel Embiid right now. Shut him down, please. Now, Mr. Paul George.
Yeah, this is the one.
I said last year that Paul George was not the second best player in the Clippers. James Harden was better than him. And that was met with some pushback because Paul George shot 41% from three, averaged 23 points per game. He was the all-star on the Clippers. It was cool. Everyone was praising Paul George. Ignoring the fact that for like 3 months of the season, he decided to stop trying on defense and he was just going through the motions throughout games and he was just trolling. Ignoring that because he put up 20. Ignoring the fact that he was in probably the most advantageous situation of any star player in the NBA, where he wasn't given on-ball responsibilities. He was given one of the premier playmakers in the NBA, Kawhi Leonard, one of the best isolation players in the NBA. You had Paul George, quite frankly, being Norman Powell, coming off curl screens, playing off advantages, one dribble pull-ups, getting to the rim with ease because he didn't have to create his own shot. It was heaven for Paul George. I pointed that stuff out. I was being called a hater. Then I heard everything Paul George said about his contract negotiations with the Clippers and how he felt he was hard done by. And I said I got tired. I'm tired of Paul George. Then I watched the playoffs. James Harden was very clearly the better player between those two in that series because Paul George didn't have the luxury of being with all due respect, Norman Powell. He had to create for himself. He had to create for his teammates, and he couldn't guard. If anyone remembers that series, that man was picking up foul after foul after foul, trying to guard. I don't know if he fouled out of any of the games, but they were trying to put him on Luka Doncic, on Kyrie, use Paul George like the defensive wing he's supposed to be, and all he was doing was foul after foul after foul. But I couldn't point that out because he was an all-star, and I can't hate on Paul George. And then he goes to Philly, and everyone rejoiced. He's better than Tobias Harris. You know what? Even I thought, at worst, at least he's going to be better than Tobias Harris. And I'm watching it unfold. I don't know if he's better than Tobias Harris. He just hasn't been good. Defensively, no. Offensively, the lack of aggression, the inability to self-generate efficient offense, the reliance on other people to create offense for him, the inability to get to the rim. The only thing I think he's done somewhat solid is like be a passer and decision maker. But even then, he's overpassing and the decisions haven't been great. Paul George is taking 10% of his shots within 0 to 3 feet. 10.
Yeah, he just can't create that rim pressure.
Like, he just can't get downhill. Like, I know everyone's seen the memes of Paul George will beat his man and then snatch it back to beat his man again to take a contested mid-range jumper. That's the reality of the situation. Like, that's the reality of what Paul George is at this point. And I just, for the money he's getting, shout out to Paul George, get your money, get your bread. But the Sixers are in a bad situation. I'll say that. They're in a very bad predicament. And Paul George, I've been very low on for the past 2-3 seasons. Now I think everyone has kind of like got to the same point of where I'm at. In fact, they're probably lower on him than I am. But it's not good. Paul George is not good. Shut him down as well. He said he's playing. That's his. I'm not going to call it an excuse because it sounds valid. He's getting shots to play in every game.
Yeah.
Why?
In his like left hand or something.
Why are we playing him? There's no need. They are 20. The Philadelphia 76ers are 20 and 36. What are they playing for?
They're not playing for anything. It's
like, shut them down. Paul George is going to be 35 soon. Joel Embiid is the oldest 31 we've ever seen. Shut him down. Shut them down. Like, there is no reason why they are playing. I need an explanation from Daryl Morey or whoever's on the Philadelphia medical staff or someone to explain why they are playing. The Philadelphia 76ers are not an all-time bad team, but I do think they are having an all-time bad season in terms of how they are handling what they should have been and what they're dealing with. So I don't know if you agree, but I'm going to make an executive decision. The Philadelphia 76ers are the first team going in the all-time bad category. And I can assure you, I think only one other team is going to join them.
Yeah, I can see it.
It's bad. It's bad.
Because it's like the only reason I would be like, you know what? And once again, I still don't even agree with this. They were like, you know what? When Embiid and Paul George aren't playing, we aren't getting any money. Nobody's coming to watch. Nobody's tuning in. Nobody's buying merch. So if these guys can play, they're going to play, damn it. But that's the only thing that I can think of. That's the only thing I could think of. And I still wouldn't agree with that. But because it's like you're playing with Joel Embiid's career at this point. Like,
yeah, we're
starting to get to a point where it's like how much more surgeries is he going to be able to have to still have the confidence to suit up for the next season? So it's just like, you know what? Get his ass off the floor. Let's get you this surgery. You'll be all right for next year. And they could have really secured that top 6 pick. They could have really secured it. But instead, and it all went downhill once Jared McCain got hurt. And once again, I have a bias towards Jared McCain because he's become one of my favorite players. But it sucks. It sucks. And it's just like, it's sad. It's really sad because it's like you can't catch a break. And Joel Embiid is one of the most talented big men I've ever seen. One of the most talented big men I've ever seen. And it's like one really good playoff run from Joel Embiid can change the whole narrative about him. It's like people are going to overlook last year, where if he would have played 65 games, he would have been my vote to win MVP. Or just the scoring, the rebounding, being one of the better mid-range shooters as a big man the league has ever seen. And it's just like the thing that's going to be wrapped around him is he couldn't be healthy around playoff time. He was always hurt, the foul baiting, the dirty playing. That's what's going to be wrapped around Joel Embiid for his entire career. Not, oh, he was a great mid-range shooter. He was such a great scorer. He was a great isolation big. Nobody's going to talk about that.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but I can't even say on to better things because the next team it's not great either. The next team is the Phoenix Suns. So let's talk about the Phoenix Suns. I don't think it's as doom and gloom, but it's not great.
No, it's not great. It's not great at all.
They won last night. Bradley Beal back in the starting lineup. They're trying a lot of different things. They got off Yusuf Nurkic. That's a positive. They got off Yusuf Nurkic. They finally moved Tyus Jones to the bench. It took a while, but they've now done that. So not to toot my own horn, but I'm shooting 2 for 2 on things about the Suns. Yusuf Nurkic was terrible, and Tyus Jones is not good enough. 2 for 2. So we'll take that. But all jokes aside, talk to me about the Phoenix Suns. Talk to me about
it's so funny how we just got done talking about Joel Embiid and Shams just made a report about him. Like literally.
Yeah, I just seen the chat say that, so I'm going to look for it now. Actually, let me read that first before we.
Yeah.
Okay. This tweet from Shams says, actually, let me put it on the screen. This tweet from Shams says, the 76ers and Joel Embiid are consulting doctors and considering alternative options on his injured knee. Sources tell ESPN. Sides have hope for progress in Embiid's body, but his efforts to play and current treatments, including injections, have not provided any improvement. And then he followed that up by saying Embiid has scored 15 or fewer points in consecutive games for the first time in almost 4 years, and again experienced swelling in his left knee after Saturday's home loss to the Brooklyn Nets. Okay. We're going to have to talk about this. I'm sorry. We have to. So sorry, Phoenix. We'll come back to you.
Yeah.
So you're telling me you guys have been injecting this man to play for a team that at best was going to make the 10 seed. You have been playing this man, dealing with swelling throughout the whole season. He said, I want to have the surgery. He said, I don't think I can be 100% without the surgery. And you guys said, nah, injections. Like, are we... If this isn't malpractice, what is it? Because they played him last year in the postseason. And I said that was malpractice to me because he didn't look right. But at least in the postseason, you can try and justify it with, we thought we had a chance to win. And you know what? When Joel Embiid was on the floor, you guys were beating the Knicks. Now, the negative 50 net rating in the 40 minutes he didn't play in the series, cool. I guess he can't play the whole series, whatever. At least you did it in the postseason. He then went to the Olympics.
Don't know why he did that.
Yeah, we saw Kawhi Leonard, and whether that's the Clippers or Team USA, look at Kawhi and say, he's not ready. He can't go. That was commended. It was, okay, let's get Kawhi for the season, the thing that's more important. Joel Embiid goes to the Olympics. After looking completely wrong in the postseason, he went to the Olympics. He had a brace on his knee the whole time and still looked like he couldn't move. But he was there. They didn't do anything about it. The Sixers didn't intervene. They let him go. He then comes into training camp and we're hearing about the swelling in his knee, the problems, how they have to manage this and yada, yada, yada. And he couldn't participate in training camp or in preseason. He then misses the opening portion of the season because the swelling in his knee will not go down. He then comes back. And I believe, I may be wrong, he came back early on in the season after like 10 games. And after about 3 games, the swelling was back. And he ended up missing some more time. And then he came back again, got hit in the face, got a sinus fracture. That could have been the sign right there. It's just not meant to be. And ever since, you've been dealing with swelling and miss time. He plays 4 games and then he can't play back-to-backs, and you're dealing with the swelling. You're now injecting him to keep playing in these games. All the while, the team sucks without him. The team sucks with him. He doesn't look good when he's out there. The team doesn't look good with him when he's out there. This looks like malpractice to me. I'm going to keep ranting, and I don't want to because I do want to get back to the Phoenix Suns. So, John D, what's your thoughts on that report, the situation?
Yeah, I don't know how Joel Embiid looks at this and says, you know what, I'm just gonna take my talent elsewhere. At this point, like, and I know I'm not usually the guy to be like, you know what, Joel Embiid just needs to go, but it's like we've seen teams ruin NBA players. I think this happened to Isaiah Thomas. I also think this happened to Victor Oladipo, where they kind of not died down, but they kind of like sold them short on how bad their injury truly was so they could play more, and it ended up ruining their careers. And this is something that could very much ruin Joel Embiid's career, not just like ruin the season, but ruin the entire career. So it's really disheartening to see a team like Philly just inject him with things. And then I still wouldn't understand it if you guys were contending, but you guys are not even in the play-in right now. You're not in the play-in. Jared McCain's out. Paul George is also hurt. You had a top 6 protected pick.
Eric Gordon has a wrist injury that apparently 2 specialists can't figure out.
Like,
Andre Drummond has been dealing with a foot injury for a very long time. I don't know what the Sixers have going on with their medical stuff, but something is wrong.
They all need to be fired.
Something is wrong.
Fired. Like, it's awful. It's awful. And it's like, we've seen this happen before. We've seen teams like sell short players' injuries. And it's like, you have a player who, once again, and it's like, this is why I don't understand the Joel Embiid narrative, because it's like every time Joel Embiid is on the floor, you can clearly tell he wants to be on the floor. People try and use Joel Embiid's injuries against him when it's like, I'm sure 1000% if Joel Embiid had to choose, he'd rather be on the floor. So once again, so to have that type of player and to not want to do right by him when he has constantly been through injury and came in season after season, wanting to be in Philadelphia, wanting to provide a championship for Philadelphia. And we're like, you know what? We're going to bust our ass to try and be 35-47, make a 10 seed, and lose to the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 games, just so you can have the surgery in the offseason. You can miss the first quarter of the season, and we can run it back all over again. We're just going to do this for the next 3 to 5 years. You're going to play through injury. You're going to get the surgery in the offseason. You're going to miss the first 2 months of basketball. We're going to be the 6 to 10 seed once again, and we're just going to keep running it year after year after year after year after year until you retire. That's what we're going to do, Joel Embiid. It's disgusting. It's awful. It's awful. It's awful, bro. Like, you don't have a player of this talent to where that's had all these season-ending injuries or all these terrible injuries to his knees at that. And you're just like, you know what? We're just going to pump him with some fluids. You know, we're going to give him some injections. He's going to play through it. We're going to be the 10th seed. We might lose to the Hawks. We might lose to the Magic. But if we get through those 2, we're definitely losing to the Cavs. And we're going to give OKC another pick, you know. So yeah, I really tried to steer clear from this topic, but you know, I might have to make a video. I usually let things like build up before I make a video. Like the Suns, they had to get a video from me, but yeah, this is really sad. It's really sad, bro.
Yeah. Speaking of the Suns, now we can get back to the Suns. Yeah, talk to me about Phoenix.
Now this situation is bad, but the only thing that I would say is you have a team that's clearly willing to give you your picks back, so it's not all terrible. Kevin Durant can be moved. Kevin Durant is still very valuable. Devin Booker is still very valuable. So that's a bright spot. But outside of that, I think the roster construction around this team is just really bad. I do think there is a way that you can have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant win you a championship if you build the right team around it, but you just didn't go about it. And I totally think Bradley Beal was a bad trade. Even at the time, I thought it was a bad trade because you have guys who all play in the same area of the floor. Bradley Beal is the guy who likes to play in the mid range, like to have the ball in his hand, to where I would have loved to have a more playmaking / defensive oriented guard, or maybe a more traditional rim protector or next to Kevin Durant for the Phoenix Suns, but instead they went out to go get Bradley Beal. At the time, a lot of people were saying like, oh no, at the time this was a really good move. No, Bradley Beal would have always been a risky deal because he had a $50 million contract with a no trade clause. That's why the Phoenix Suns, I don't know how many teams were really in the Bradley Beal sweepstakes back that offseason. I don't really remember, but I know that it wasn't a lot of teams that were it wasn't a clear bidding war for Bradley Beal. I think the Heat were in conversation to get Bradley Beal, but they were pressured because Dame didn't end up going to the Miami Heat and they needed a backup plan and things of that nature. And then the Suns, I don't know, man. I feel like there's a lot that the Suns did wrong. And one of the biggest things is just Bradley Beal just being $50 million a year and having a no trade clause. So that sucks for them. Devin Booker has had a very underwhelming season, but I still think Devin Booker has been really good. It's just with the way Mike Budenholzer coaches, I think the Suns are taking a lot more threes than they usually do. Mars, I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to search up these stats real quick and see how many threes Devin Booker has actually taken this season. This season, he's averaging about what? He's averaging 26. He's shooting about 34% from three. And I definitely know his 3-point percentage has gone up. If we take a look,
he's shooting 7.7 threes a game.
Yeah, 7.7 threes. And 40% of his shots are coming from the 3-point line. 41 if you want me to round up. He was at 32. Yeah. He's at 32 last year. So yeah, it's just the more of the fact that the Suns want to be more of a 3-point shooting centric type of team, and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker were not that. And I think last season they were like right outside the top 10 offensively or inside the top 10 with having two mid-range centric type of players. So I don't necessarily know what the issue is there, especially when you have one of the greatest mid-range shooters of all time. It's like if he can get to that level of offense, I don't know what's the big deal of trying to push more threes. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know why Ryan Dunn is out of rotation. I can assume it's because of offense, but I don't agree with that being the case. It's interesting seeing the Suns go to Bol as they seek for NBA rotation caliber players. I'm gonna keep saying it. Tyus Jones is just not it. Like, he's just not good enough. I've never understood the infatuation people have with a point guard who won't look at the rim, is a defensive liability, and makes some of the most basic reads I've ever seen. I don't understand people's infatuation with that archetype, but all credit to Tyus Jones. I will say he's making a minimum contract, so he's not exactly hurting the team financially in a way that Bradley Beal's contract is. Although I think Bradley Beal, I don't think has been bad. I think Bradley Beal just the contract is crippling. The contract and the no trade clause is crippling. Devin Booker, I do think, has been disappointing this season. I've been more disappointed in Devin Booker defensively than offensively. I think offensively, he's just being used in a different way. He still is the Suns' primary playmaker. Whether people like to admit it or not, it's not Tyus Jones, it's Devin Booker. Like you said, he is shooting the largest percentage of his shots from three of his career. He's still an elite mid-range shooter. He's still fantastic. That one dribble pull-up, turnaround jumpers, that scoring versatility is still there. He's getting to the rim less than ever, which is, I guess, a concern. And his finishing at the rim, his efficiency has been a lot worse than it has been in the past as well, which is another, I guess, cause for concern. But I still think Devin Booker has overall been a very good player this season. He's an all-star caliber player. That's what he has been. Kevin Durant, I think, has been great. Still the best mid-range scorer in the league. If not him, it's Shea. It's one and two. Still one of the best isolation players in the NBA. Very good in transition. Very good away from the ball. The issue with Kevin Durant, and this is why I guess I'm going to keep bringing it up, because I genuinely think Tyus Jones is one of the biggest problems with this team. Kevin Durant's handle, as he's become less explosive and less athletic, has become more and more of a problem. But because the Suns do not have anyone who can create for themselves and others outside of him and D-Book and Bradley Beal when he comes in off the bench, Kevin Durant is being asked to create for himself and others at a rate that I don't think is sustainable and viable for high-level offense. He's turning the ball over a lot, and he's not able to get to the pressure points on defense in defenses that other players can. So I think that's my concern with Kevin Durant. Now, defensively, I think he's been great. He's been asked to play the 5. He's been asked to rim protect. He's been asked to switch. He's been asked to do a lot. And I think he's dealing with a very large burden at 36 years old or 35, however old he is. And he's been great. But the roster construction is the ultimate problem with the Suns. The roster construction sucks. Like, we just call it what it is. Royce O'Neal, I think, is cool. Bradley Beal, I think, is a good player, but we spoke about why it's bad for the roster. Devin Booker is great. KD is great. Am I forgetting anyone? Grayson Allen is Nick Richards is and everyone else is like, I don't even think you're like legitimate NBA caliber players within the rotation. And that's the problem. Like, you can't have a rotation where I think 6 of you are NBA players and the rest of you aren't. Like, that's not good enough. Like, that's just not good enough. So that's my biggest problem with the Suns. I have them as I have them at the bottom of the fringe playoff teams. Like, if they make the playoffs, it's by the skin of their teeth. They're barely a playoff team. That's where I have it. Like, they're a 9-10 seed that could win in the play. That's where I view them. Where do you view them?
Same here. I definitely think there's a world where they could fall out because it is the Western Conference. And I think Zach LaVine is liable to hit a jump shot any minute now. But I would say a fringe playoff team as well. I'm not going to say a playoff level team because I don't believe them to be that high. But I would say fringe playoff team.
Great. Now, unfortunately, we spent so long. We still have 6 teams left. So I want to get through these 6 teams while giving them the credit they deserve and the due. I don't want to just rush through them, but we do. Yeah. I want to get through them in the next 18 minutes if possible.
Yeah.
The next team is the Portland Trailblazers. Talk to me about the Portland Trailblazers.
They're one really good draft pick away from being one of the better young cores in the NBA. Scoot Henderson has been playing a lot better as attacking the rim a lot more. And I've said this about Scoot Henderson a lot. I want to build on that athleticism and that potential rim pressuring aspect to his game. You build an avenue where he can just put constant pressure on the rim. Then you build the playmaking because sometimes I feel like he's processing the game a little slow. And then on top of that, you add the shooting or just the scoring aspect of his game, which I do think his pull-up shooting is a little it's kind of like I don't know if it's I'm thinking of the word, but I don't know if it can sustain itself. I don't know if his 3-point shooting can sustain itself at the moment. But
sustainable?
Yeah, it's sustainable. Yeah. The word was just like escaping my mind.
Teamwork.
We got there. Tamani Kamara has been phenomenal. I think Donovan Clingan is great. And you have some people you can move. I mean, I think Anthony Simons can still be moved. I think DeAndre Ayton can still be moved. I think Jeremy Grant can still be moved. And I think Denny Avdia has been great, with his transition play, with his playmaking, his rim finishing. I think a lot of things that Denny Avdia does is really good, and I think he's going to be on the team for a very long time. So, once again, you're a Dylan Harper or Cooper Flagg away from being a really good young core. Even if you get a guy like VJ Edgecombe or a guy like Kaman, well, they're not going to get Kaman a lot because they have Clingan. But if you get a really good draft pick that just pans out, like there's a lot of really underrated guys in this draft. You get one more really good guy, you have a really premier young core. So,
yeah, I think Denny Avdia has been their best player this season. This is his 2nd year in a row. He's been the best player on his team. Now, both teams have not been great, but the Blazers are better than the Wizards. Tamani Kamara is finally getting his love from the mainstream. I've been trying to push the propaganda for a while. It's nice to see Tamani Kamara is finally getting his flowers. It's nice to see people join the crowd on that. Donovan Clingan, really promising, extremely good young rim protector. My biggest issue with him is the fouling problems. I do think he needs to do a better job of keeping his hands to himself, stop fouling, and his touch around the rim. Shaedon Sharpe, I think, has been just quite disappointing in terms of his ability to shoot the ball. Hopefully that figures out. He's still a very promising young scorer. Robert Williams has been amazing. by the way. Like, he's been really, really good for them. You kind of alluded to stuff about Scoot. I think Jeremy Grant sucks, and I don't think anyone wants him, if I'm being honest. But hopefully, if I'm the Blazers, I would get Jeremy Grant off the team. And just to be negative, I think Chris Murray is the worst player in the NBA. So yeah, but I do like a lot of the Blazers' young players, a lot of them. And I think, like you said, they are one draft pick away from. Like, I do think Dylan Harper would be amazing. Like, I really want them to get Dylan Harper. I think that'd be great. But we are putting them in the lottery section, I believe.
Yeah,
they are a lottery team. The next team, the Sacramento Kings. This is gonna be interesting. What do you think about the Sacramento Kings?
I think the Sacramento Kings got very deep with the additions of Jonas Valanciunas and Jake LaRavia. Once again, I've said this after the trade deadline, for De'Aaron Fox to give you such a short notice that he was going to move on in the offseason, you basically had to trade him because this was the best time. He still had one more full season left on his contract, I believe, plus the second half of the season after the trade deadline. You go and get Zach LaVine. You move Malik Monk to your starting point guard, who I think is a very underrated playmaker, by the way, and just the scoring that he does add to his game is really solid. But as of right now, I mean, Zach LaVine hasn't been great, and he's still finding his footing within the offense. I've watched a few games of Sacramento. I've watched the game against Orlando. I think that was his debut. I watched a few games of them. We watched the game against the Warriors. He's just struggled. He's just really struggled to hit a jump shot. He's really struggled to find his footing in that offense. And the way he's able to play on and off ball, I would think it would come around eventually, because Zach LaVine is still one of the better scorers in the NBA. And I think his fit between him and Domantas Sabonis should be pretty seamless. So I don't know. I'm giving them a little bit of grace, because I do think that one day they will figure it out. But it's only for them to be a playing team, to be completely honest. And maybe once again, like you said earlier, I look at teams like the Sacramento Kings with Domantas and Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, with these veteran guys who aren't necessarily going to get much better than what they already are right now. I look at them, I'm like, where's the avenue to be a team that can make a deep run in the playoffs? I don't see the avenue. So it's kind of like they're prolonging the rebuild just because of the history of the Sacramento Kings and where they've become and where they've been. So I would have them as a fringe playoff team.
Me too. I think, as the biggest Zach LaVine guy, I think I'm probably the biggest Zach LaVine guy. He hasn't been good at all. Some of it is, I think, shooting variance. I think he's going to be a better shooter, but I don't like the starting lineup. I thought I was going to. I don't like Monk, LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis. I don't think that's tenable. I think you have to get Keon Ellis in there. I think you need some more defense. Whether that's Zach LaVine, who has to be moved to the bench, or Malik Monk, I don't know, but someone has to get moved to the bench. I think the biggest issue, with Zach LaVine, and why I think it hasn't been a great fit, is, and I speak about this with role players, being able to make quick decisions. He didn't have to do that in Chicago. If he had a shot he didn't like, he was able to just find Vooch in the pocket. Vooch was going to do something, or maybe he'll get it back. But now he's on the Kings. He can't wait around for things to manifest themselves for him. If someone overplays him, he has to back up. He has to make these quick decisions. He has to be able to read and react quicker than he's doing. And right now he's playing losing basketball. That's what he is. He might be able to put up volume scoring numbers, but he's not doing it in a way that is viable for a winning team. And I'm not saying he can't do that. I'm saying right now, that's why I think is the biggest cause for concern. The 3-point shot, I don't think he's going to shoot 26% from three the whole time he's in Sacramento. He can shoot the ball. He'll be fine. Now, defensively, a trio, a quadruplet of Malik, Zach, DeMar, Domantas is bad. And then you have Jonas Valanciunas, who I think is one of the worst defensive bigs in the NBA. There's only so much you can do schematically. It's bad. So that's my concern. I think they're a fringe playoff team. I agree with you. But defensively, I don't know how you figure this out. If I'm being honest, I just don't know how you figure this out defensively. So that's my biggest concern with them. Fringe playoff team. I don't see them winning the playoff series if they make it. And I'd be quite surprised if they make the playoffs, if I'm being honest. But I'd be very surprised if they won a series. Now, the next team is tied to the Sacramento Kings, obviously for obvious reasons. It's the San Antonio Spurs. Now, they probably would have been higher about 4 days ago before the news. So I'm gonna start. This is a lottery team. No Wemby. It's over. Like, if I'm being honest, like we can call it what it is. They're not doing anything without their best player. Shout out to everyone else, but it's over. I really like Stephon Castle. I really like Devin Vassell. Well, really like might be a stretch at this point. But I like Devin Vassell. I think De'Aaron Fox has been nice. I think Chris Paul's had a really good season for them. But this is a team that relied entirely on Wemby on both sides of the ball. Right now, they're the 12th seed. They're a few games back of the play-in. I don't think they're going to go for it. I think they're going to go tank out. They're going to bottom out. I just heard the news that Greg Popovich is likely not coming back this season, if ever, which is a big deal. Hopefully Popovich gets his health right. Whether or not he's a coach in the NBA anymore, that's irrelevant. That's secondary to what he's dealing with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the Spurs season is over. But I think what they showed was with Wemby, they can be a competitive team. And when you got a player like Wemby, who I think is a top 10 player in the NBA, if you're able to be competitive with him in year 2 after having the number 1 pick 14 months ago or however long ago it was, that's a good sign. Now, De'Aaron Fox there, unfortunately, you don't get to build that chemistry because Wemby's not going to be out there. But De'Aaron Fox is an all-star caliber guard, in and around all-star caliber. Devin Vassell is a very promising young shooting guard who can score really well, defensively competes. Like they got good pieces. So long term, I'm optimistic. Short term, I think the season is over. What's your thoughts on the Spurs?
Yeah. Without Wemby, I didn't have a really high thought process on the San Antonio Spurs just because I heard some news about De'Aaron Fox. There's possibly a surgery that he was going to get. And it's like now he might get that surgery. Yeah. He might go get that surgery now that Wemby's out for the season. And there's already conspiracies about Cooper Flag to San Antonio. So that's going
to be great. Yeah, that's what we need to see. That's what we need to see.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie.
The next 3 teams are all in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, by the way. So we could do this quick. The next team is the Toronto Raptors. Obviously, Cooper Flag sweepstakes. They did get Brandon Ingram, who's I don't know if he's going to play for them this season. He did sign an extension. I think the Toronto Raptors are an interesting team. From what I've seen, I'm still you can see it's a very developmental season in terms of what they have guys doing. Whether that be Scotty Barnes, whether that be RJ Barrett is playing maybe the most analytically sound year of his career in terms of his shot profile, which I think has helped him quite a lot. I believe he's shooting like less than 10% of his shots from mid-range, which is really cool. Like everything he's doing is either getting downhill or he's shooting threes. He has become a better 3-point shooter in general, which is cool. So he's playing a very analytically sound game. I haven't liked his defense very much, but that's fine. Grady Dick is improving. Jonathan Mogbo looks really intriguing defensively, which I like to see. Scotty Barnes, I think, is having one of the better defensive years of his very young career, which is very, very nice. The issue is he's can't make a 3, but I have liked his post-up stuff, which has been cool. So this has been a very developmental season for the Raptors. So everything I'm saying is not about how they're going to win this year. It's about how are their guys improving. And over the course of the year, I think you can see the improvements or what they're trying to get guys to work on. Now, at the end of the day, the team's not good, but they compete in games, which is all you can really ask for a tanking team. You don't want to just get blown out every game. So they do compete in games. So yeah, my thoughts on the Raptors, very successful in the process of developing players, but ultimately not a good team, and they're hoping for a Cooper Flag. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, just something real quick. I think a lot of people kind of overlooked the Brandon Ingram signing because in the end of the day, I think Brandon Ingram, because a lot of people have grown accustomed to, if you're tanking, you need to have like poor level players around your young franchise talent, which is Scotty Barnes. I think with Scotty Barnes' playmaking, and one, I think that's really underrated about his game is his playmaking and having kind of like really good NBA players around him, whether that be IQ, RJ Barrett, Brandon Ingram, whoever they get in the draft, just having NBA level players around Scotty Barnes, that just improves his development a lot more because once again, you are as good as what is around you. in the end of the day. Like that can be said for a lot of young teams. And if it's like, if you're just going to put bad talent around your young star, there's not going to be a lot of improvement that he's going to be able to make. So I just like the signing of just going to go get talent, because in the end of the day, I don't think Brandon Ingram changes this team to the point where, oh, we are now a lottery team. Now we're probably going to get the 5th seed in the East. So it's like you can still tank with Brandon Ingram while having the talent around Scotty Barnes and other young players that you do bring in for them to develop. So I like the move. I had to sit on it for a little while, but
yeah, I agree. There's not much value in just playing with a bunch of bums. Like, I don't think you develop like that. Like, it comes down to building good habits. I don't think you build good habits having to carry bums, personally. Yeah. The next team, this is a team that just beat the Rockets last night. The Utah Jazz. What's your thoughts on the Utah Jazz?
Isaiah Collier is great. Lauri Markkanen should be moved. Walker Kessler is a Laker. But Isaiah Collier's ball handling has been very impressive over the past few weeks with his rim pressure and the playmaking out of the rim pressure. I think Lauri Markkanen's great. Cody Williams has not been good, and I've really been I really tried to be high on Cody Williams coming into the draft, but he just hasn't been good. And it wasn't like he did anything fantastic. And now that he's getting to the NBA, the fact that he didn't do anything great in college is kind of getting worse now that he's in the NBA. I'm growing lower and lower on Keontae George, just him as a lead ball handler. I think he's going to be a combo guard that can't really play off ball, in my opinion. I think Colin Sexton's going to be
last night, to be fair.
Say again?
He just had 30 last night, to be fair.
Yeah, that's always my timing. Always my timing. You know? But yeah, man, I think the Jazz still don't have, like, outside of Collier and maybe Walker Kessler, if they don't move him, I don't see any stamped young players on this roster yet. It's like where we're going to keep him. I haven't seen much of Taylor Hendricks so far to me to assume if he's like a stamp in this organization yet. So hopefully this is the draft where they get a guy where it's like, this is the guy we're going to move forward with, because there's questions around a lot of and I haven't seen much of Kyle Flipowski, so I'm not going to speak on him yet as well.
He's been good, to be fair. Yeah, he's been good for them. Yeah, the Jazz are a team where, like, I'm solely watching them to see how these young players are progressing. Lauri Markkanen seems to have made a conscious decision to improve his shot profile, improve his shot making. So he's taken just a very higher degree of difficulty shots this year, which once again, in the process of development, you can never stop developing. I think he's 27, 28, but he's still working on his game, which is nice to see. It's obviously hurt his efficiency. He's not having a great season in terms of outcomes, but you can see it might help him in the future. Keontae George is still struggling in terms of efficiency, and I do have very similar concerns of that you have in terms of what is his position long term. I do think he's a combo guard. He's still very heavily geared towards scoring, but he's very also comfortable passing the ball. It's just, how do you fit him next to Collier long term? Because I do think Collier is a point guard of the future. I think the last 20 or so games, he's averaging 9 assists a game. I think he's had 10 assists in 6 of his last 9 games. Collier was he might have been my favorite point guard. No, he wasn't my favorite point guard. I really liked. Wait, was he my favorite point guard in the draft last year? He was. Yeah, he was my number 1 point guard in the draft last year. I really liked Isaiah Collier. Yeah. I thought when they got him, it was a steal. Now, it started off rough. He was one of the worst players in the league very early on, so I couldn't push the Collier propaganda. But recently, he's looked a lot better. So yeah, I really loved Isaiah Collier coming in. I think Walker Kessler is an all defensive level big. I think he's great.
He's a Laker.
Yeah, I think he's great defensively. So I think Walker Kessler is great. I think John Collins having a career year, if I'm being, well, maybe not career, having a really good season, one of the best since he left Atlanta. And I do think, I wasn't high on Kyle Filipowski, but I do think he's been quite solid in terms of his ability to run the floor, drive, get to the basket. That was a thing I didn't really expect from him. The shot has been mediocre. Cody Williams has shown flashes of like potential as like a rim finisher and stuff, but very few and far between. Taylor Hendricks, obviously, we seen the injury early on, so we didn't get a strong gauge of him. But overall, Jazz lottery team looking for their franchise player, I think. Whether that's Cooper Flagg in this draft, whether that's AJ Demansur in next year's draft, we don't know. But they are looking for that franchise guy. But they do have some intriguing young players, and I still think Will Hardy is one of the more creative offensive coaches in the NBA, which is always cool to see. But they are a lottery team. Now the next team, I think this should be quite quick. the final team, the Washington Wizards. Go ahead, find something positive to say.
Alex Sarr and Bilal Coulibaly are really solid defenders, and if you bring in Cooper Flag, that's going to be a lot of defensive potential on that team. Jordan Poole has really bounced back this year, so that's been great as well.
Yeah, they suck. I think the Wizards might be the worst team I've ever seen. If I'm being honest, I think they might be the worst team I've ever seen. Their record isn't gonna suggest it, but I think they suck. Bilal started the season really well. I really liked his scoring aggression. He was getting to a floater that was really nice to see. It's tapered off quite a lot since then. Still got questions about what is his ceiling offensively, but defensively, really intriguing. Very good measurables, very good high motor. Kyle Kuzma's off the team. That's amazing. Alex Sarr defensively has been really good. Alex Sarr offensively has been really bad. Corey Kispert, I still think, is a very valuable player for a contending team in terms of his off-ball movement, his ability to play baselines and slip screens and all of those things. I think he's very valuable for a good team. Anyone else I want to talk about real quick for the Wizards? No. You spoke about Jordan Poole. I think Jordan Poole's been good. Bob Carrington's been intriguing. As a ball handler, especially in pick and roll, that's been intriguing. Haven't really liked Keyshawn George at all, to be honest. Anyone else I'm forgetting? No. The Wizards suck. Like, they're in the all-time bad category next to the Sixers, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the ends of our 30 teams. We are gonna have to put them in order real quick and then read super chats. But we did get through the end of the 30. But yes, now is the time. Now is the time where we do put them in order. We're gonna try our best. We don't want to spend too long doing this, but this is what we have so far. This is what we have. I didn't put them all in order, but we have the Celtics, Cavs, and Thunder in the championship contenders. Then the playoff teams, we have the Nuggets, Mavs, Lakers, Pacers, Clippers, Grizzlies, Rockets, Bucks, and Knicks. In the fringe playoff teams, this is from last week. We had the Warriors, Pistons, Heat, Timberwolves, Magic, Suns, Kings. In the lottery teams, you have the Hawks, Bulls, Nets, Hornets, Pelicans, Blazers, Spurs, Raptors, and Jazz. And the all-time bad teams is the Wizards and the Sixers for different reasons, obviously. Now, let's start from the top. Who's the best team in the NBA?
The Thunder are the best team in the NBA. Do I think they are my favorite to win it? No. So what's the tiebreaker between that? Should we go with who's the best team right now? Well, it is a power ranking. Yeah, so just give me the Thunder at number one.
Okay, Thunder number one. Does that mean you have Boston or Cleveland number two?
I would take Boston just because they kind of take care of Cleveland every time.
Interesting. But, so we got the Thunder 1, Boston 2, Cleveland 3. I would have Cleveland 3. I really don't know between OKC and Boston, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, like it's a tough decision. I've went back and forth on it every week.
Now this is gonna be interesting because we just seen these two teams match up and we saw what happens. So who's the best team in this bracket? The Mavs obviously just lost tonight. The Nuggets just lost to the Lakers last night. I think the Pacers are beating the Clippers right now.
Badly.
The Grizzlies are the 2 seed in the West. The Rockets are on a little skid. They're now down to 5. The Bucks are the 5 seed in the East, but they do have tremendous talent. And the Knicks are the 3 seed in the East. So who's the best team amongst these teams? And also, I want to ask real quick, do you want to move the Warriors up?
Yeah, I would move the Warriors up and move the Rockets down.
I ain't asked about all that, but we can do that.
I was thinking about that earlier, but the Denver Nuggets are still the best team in the best team in this tier. The Lakers beat them, and I was on playback yesterday saying the Lakers are great and all, but I still don't think we beat the Nuggets in a 7-game series. And now, when I said that, I wasn't a real Laker fan, but it is what it is. I still think the Lakers have a lot of weaknesses defensively that are just going to get attacked extremely excessively in a 7-game series. And then the only thing that I really took from this Lakers game against the Nuggets is I think JJ Redick is good enough to make a average defense elite in a playoff situation with his schemes and things of that nature. I think I've really flipped on JJ Redick as a coach. At first, I was like, you know what? Some things about JJ Redick I just don't love. Now, the more the season goes along, I'm starting to really be on board with what JJ Redick is doing, but I would still say I would put the Lakers at number 2, though. I will put the Lakers at number 2.
Damn, so the Mavs was falling down for you. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Me personally, I would have the Mavs as the best team in this group. Then I would have maybe the Knicks. I would have probably the Mavs, Knicks, Lakers. I'm not high on the Nuggets at all. So I would I'm moving the Knicks up. That's an executive decision.
Yeah.
I would have the Mavs number 1, the Knicks number 2, the Lakers 3, maybe. I can flip the Knicks and Lakers. I'd have the Mavs number 1, the Lakers and Knicks, I don't know. Then I would have. This is hard. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I can give you guys an order.
This is what I'm saying. Like,
we're not giving you an order. We're giving you the tiers. The order
off the dome. Like, that's
all I can promise you. The Wizards are at the bottom, and we have these 3 as the top 3. Everything else in between, that's too difficult. I can't do all of that. I'm sorry. Sorry if you expected a 1 through 30 ranking. I tried. I'm not good enough to do all that. Sorry, guys. We're bad at content. But anyway, we got a couple super chats. Tito Albandito said, "Happy birthday, Big Mars." Okay. Have you had a chance to watch Kenny's video to the NBA? Any thoughts? Yeah, I seen it. It was him saying that the way the NBA is promoted is bad. I agree.
Same here.
I think everyone has said that. I don't think, and this is not me disrespecting anyone. I just don't think it. Sometimes you don't need to have a unique take. Like, I'm not judging Kenny for not having a unique take. Sometimes the consensus take can just be the right take. I don't think it was. I don't think I have to have any thoughts on it because I've said the exact same thing before. So I agree with the video. I agree that the way the game is presented by people is incorrect. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that video. But shout out to Kenny. Did PG even play better than Christian Brown and Russell Westbrook this year? Christian Brown, actually,
Brown has been better.
No, he hasn't. I was gonna be like, maybe he played better than. No, I don't think he has. I don't think so. I don't think so. Good question. Maybe Russ, but like, he definitely has been better than Christian Brown. But like, maybe I'm blinded by Russ's game last night because that was bad. But
it was bad.
I don't know. Paul George has been bad. DSG Piccolo, Blazers fan. Tumani showed you how to put a LaMelo in a box. Tumani's done a hell of a job on quite a few people this year, and I think he's still leads in the league in offensive fouls drawn, which is great. And then the final super chat before we get out of here. Context clues. How bad is it for the Knicks to be blown out in every game versus the top 3 teams in the NBA heading into the playoffs? I think it just shows that there's a major gap between them and the legitimate title contenders. I didn't view them as legitimate title contenders when the trade happens, but just watching it, I just think you can see there's a level gap between the legitimate title contenders, in which I think there's only 3, and the Knicks, and I think that's fine. So yeah, I just think they're in that tier 2 where they could beat most other teams. They just can't beat those 3 teams. I'm not saying they'll get swept in this series, but I do think it could be tough. But obviously, we got to see what Mitchell Robinson looks like when he gets back. See if that changes anything. It could change the dynamic. I don't know. But overall, I just view the Knicks as a tier 2 contender, strong playoff team who can beat a lot of teams, just not those teams. But that does bring us to the end. I told John D before the show I wanted to go for an hour and a half. We're 39 minutes ahead. Well, longer than I expected. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I enjoyed it.
Yes, sir.
But like always, John D, where can everyone find you?
You guys can find me over at the Buzzer Sports. We talk basketball all the time. You know, film breakdowns, draft work, trade breakdowns, everything that you could possibly want in basketball. Also started adding 2K content, which is something I did when I first started doing YouTube. Kind of got away from it because I didn't have an Elgato and the videos just weren't good. But now that I have an Elgato, I'm going back to 2K content. Just trying to broaden my basketball thing because I don't want it to just be NBA. I want it to just be a simple love of basketball channel, where we talk about college, high school, women's. So we're trying to broaden that just a little bit more. But yeah, you can expect videos from me about 5 to 6 times a week. Varieties of different videos, whether it's film breakdowns, what if scenarios. I actually just bought a notebook to where I'm breaking down historic players, like with a very in-depth type of way. So I'm gonna start doing videos on that as well. And yeah, man, 5 to 6 times a week.
There you go. As always, John, these links are in the description. You find me here and on Player's Choice. I don't think anyone who watches anyone who watches me doesn't watch Player's Choice. I might need to do a better job of creating my own audience, but that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, Player's Choice, Monday through Friday. Here, guaranteed every Sunday, sometimes midweek, sometimes on Saturdays, depending on guests and whatever the case may be. But we will be back next week. I don't know what we will be doing next week, but we will be back next week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Leave a comment on where you would rank certain teams and how we hated on your team or how we overrated a certain team and a certain player. Just leave your thoughts. Thank you guys to everyone who watches. Thank you to everyone who sends super chats. And we will see you when we see you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and yeah.